Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's that time again where we dive into some absolutely wild relationship drama that'll make your own dating life look peaceful by comparison. I've got a collection of stories tonight that honestly made me question everything I thought I knew about modern relationships. Before we start, comment below where you're watching from. I love asking this question because it shows how far across the internet these videos go. I've seen some of your comments go from places like Australia to Germany, even to South Africa. Anyway, grab whatever cozy drink you're sipping on, get comfortable under those blankets, and let's explore some peak internet chaos together. Our first story comes from someone dealing with a girlfriend who apparently thinks their relationship is public entertainment. My girlfriend Emma keeps posting our arguments online. She says it's just sharing her truth, but I feel exposed. I've been with Emma for about 8 months now, and for the most part, things have been really good between us. She's funny, smart, and we have this great chemistry that I've never really experienced with anyone else before. The problem is that every time we have even the smallest disagreement, it ends up on her social media within hours. It started about 3 months ago when we had our first real fight. It was over something stupid. I can't even remember what exactly. But I said something that hurt her feelings, and she got upset. We worked it out that same night, talked through everything, and I thought we were good. The next morning I woke up to find she'd posted this long Instagram story about how men need to learn to communicate better and stop dismissing women's feelings. She didn't mention my name specifically, but she included enough details that anyone who knew us would know exactly what she was talking about. I brought it up with her, and she said she was just processing her emotions and that sharing her experiences helps other women feel less alone. I could understand that perspective, so I let it slide. But then it kept happening. Every argument, every disagreement, every moment of tension between us would somehow end up as content for her followers. Last week we had a disagreement about spending time with each other versus our friends. I'd been working a lot of overtime, and when I finally had a free weekend, I wanted to hang out with some buddies I hadn't seen in weeks. Emma wanted us to have a romantic weekend together, just the two of us. It turned into this whole thing about priorities and making time for each other. We eventually compromised and decided to do both, split the weekend between couple time and friend time. But the next day, Emma posted this thread on Twitter about boyfriends who don't prioritize their relationships and how women shouldn't have to compete with their partner's friends for attention. She quoted things I'd said during our private conversation, word for word. My friend started texting me, asking if everything was okay between us, and I felt completely humiliated. When I confronted her about it, she got defensive and said she never mentioned my name and that I was being paranoid. She said her social media is her space to express herself and that I shouldn't try to control what she posts. She also said that if I didn't want our conversations shared, maybe I should think more carefully about what I say during arguments. The thing is, I don't think I say anything particularly terrible during our disagreements. We're usually pretty respectful with each other, but normal couples fight about normal things. The issue is that she presents these fights to her followers in a way that makes me look like the villain. She'll share her side of the story and leave out context or things she said that might have escalated the situation. Her followers always rally around her in the comments, calling me names and telling her she deserves better, even though they only know her version of events. Some of her friends have started treating me differently when we hang out in person, and I can tell they've formed opinions about me based on what she shared online. I love Emma, and I want this relationship to work, but I'm starting to feel like I can't be myself around her anymore. I'm constantly worried that anything I say might end up as a cautionary tale on her Instagram. It's like having our relationship under a microscope, where thousands of strangers get to judge every interaction we have. Last night, we had another small disagreement about dinner plans, and I found myself choosing my words so carefully that the conversation felt completely unnatural. I shouldn't have to walk on eggshells in my own relationship, but I also don't want to wake up to another social media post about toxic masculinity or emotional unavailability. I've tried explaining to Emma how this makes me feel, but she says I'm being dramatic and that she's not doing anything wrong. She says if I'm embarrassed by our conversations being shared, maybe I need to examine why that is. She's turned this into me having a problem with her expressing herself, rather than acknowledging that sharing private relationship details without consent might be hurtful. I don't know what to do anymore. I care about her so much, but I feel like I'm dating her and her entire social media following at the same time. Every fight feels like a performance where she's gathering material for her next post. I just want to have a normal relationship where our problems stay between us until we figure them out together. That story ends there. The weaponization of social media in relationships is genuinely terrifying, and this girl has turned her boyfriend into content for her personal brand. Living under surveillance constant, where every conversation might become public entertainment, would drive anyone insane. The fact that she's gaslighting him into thinking he's the problem for not wanting their private moments shared shows exactly who she really is. Some people really will sacrifice their partner's dignity for likes and comments. Let's move to our next story about someone dealing with a boyfriend who apparently thinks commitment comes with loopholes. My boyfriend Noah refuses to delete dating apps. He says he only scrolls for fun, but it makes me uncomfortable. Noah and I have been together for about 6 months now, and overall I really love being with him. He's attentive, funny, and we have great conversations about everything from work stress to our future plans. We've talked about being exclusive, and we both agreed that's what we wanted. The problem is that he still has active dating apps on his phone, and when I bring it up, he acts like I'm being unreasonable. I first noticed it about 2 months ago when his phone was sitting on my coffee table, and I saw a notification from Bumble pop up on the screen. I didn't say anything right away, because I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just forgot to delete it or something. But then I noticed he would sometimes be scrolling through something on his phone and quickly close the app when I came near him. Finally, I decided to bring it up directly. I asked him if he was still using dating apps, and he said yes, but only to scroll through profiles when he's bored. He compared it to scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, just mindless entertainment. He said he never messages anyone or meets up with anyone. He just likes looking at the profiles and seeing what's out there. I told him that made me really uncomfortable and asked if he would consider deleting the app since we're in a committed relationship. That's when things got weird. He got defensive and said I was being controlling and that having the apps didn't mean he was cheating or planning to cheat. He said I should trust him and that if I really knew him, I'd know he would never actually use them to meet other people. He also said that asking him to delete the apps showed that I don't trust him, and that trust is the foundation of any good relationship. He turned the whole conversation around to make it seem like I was the one with the problem for being insecure about some harmless scrolling. But here's the thing that really bothers me. If it's truly harmless and just for entertainment, why does he need to keep it secret? Why does he close the apps when I'm around? And why is he so resistant to deleting something that supposedly means nothing to him? I've tried to understand his perspective. Maybe some people really do just scroll through dating apps the way they scroll through social media, but it feels different to me because dating apps are specifically designed for meeting romantic partners. It's not the same as looking at random photos on Instagram. These are real people in our area who are actively looking for relationships. The whole thing makes me feel like he's keeping his options open, even if he's not actively pursuing them. Like he wants to see what else is available while he's with me. It makes me question whether he's really as committed to our relationship as he claims to be. I've also noticed that since this conversation, he's become more secretive with his phone in general. He'll take it with him to the bathroom, keep it face down when we're hanging out, and I've caught him staying up late scrolling through something after he thinks I've fallen asleep. Last week I brought it up again, and he got really frustrated with me. He said we've already talked about this and that I need to let it go. He said, if I keep bringing up the dating apps, it's going to ruin our relationship because it shows I don't trust him. He made it sound like I was being obsessive and paranoid, but I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right about this whole situation. If someone asked me to delete dating apps for the sake of our relationship, I would do it without question, because those apps would serve no purpose in my life once I found someone I wanted to be with. The fact that he's fighting so hard to keep them makes me think they're more important to him than he's letting on. I love Noah, and I want to trust him, but his behaviour around this whole thing is making me feel crazy. Maybe I am being too controlling or insecure, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect your partner to delete dating apps when you're in an exclusive relationship. I just don't know how to move forward when we clearly have such different views on what's appropriate in a committed relationship. That story is over. The mental gymnastics this guy is doing to justify keeping dating apps while in a relationship is Olympic-level impressive. If you're truly committed to someone, you don't need to window shop for backup options during your free time. The fact that he's turning her completely reasonable request into her being controlling tells you everything about his intentions. Moving on to someone whose partner wants to take the next big step, but they're having second thoughts. My partner Chloe wants to move in. I don't. She says I'm stalling, but I'm not ready. Chloe and I have been dating for just over a year now, and things have been really great between us. We spend most weekends together, we've met each other's families, and we talk about future plans like vacations and holidays. About 2 months ago, she started bringing up the idea of us moving in together, and ever since then, it's become this constant source of tension between us. Her lease is up at the end of next month, and she's been looking at apartments that would work for both of us. She's found a few places she really likes and keeps sending me listings, asking what I think about different neighbourhoods and apartment layouts. Every time she brings it up, I feel this wave of anxiety wash over me, but I can't really articulate why. It's not that I don't love Chloe or see a future with her. I do, but something about moving in together right now feels too fast for me. We've only been together for a year, and I feel like we're still getting to know each other in a lot of ways. Moving in together feels like such a big step, and once we do it, there's no going back to the way things are now. I've tried to explain this to Chloe, but she thinks I'm making excuses or trying to avoid commitment. She points out that we already spend most nights together anyway, so moving in would just make things more convenient and save us both money. She's not wrong about that, but convenience and cost savings don't feel like the right reasons to take such a big relationship step. She's also started comparing our relationship to her friends' relationships. Her best friend moved in with her boyfriend after 8 months, and another friend moved in with her partner after just 6 months. She says a year is plenty of time to know if you want to live with someone, and that most couples our age would have already taken this step. The pressure is really getting to me because I know she needs to make a decision about her living situation soon. She can't keep her current apartment, and she needs to either find a place with me or find a place by herself. But every conversation we have about it turns into an argument about commitment and what I really want from this relationship. Last weekend, she got really upset and said she feels like I'm stringing her along. She said if I'm not ready to move in together after a year, maybe I'm never going to be ready for a serious relationship with her. She asked me point blank if I see a future with her, and when I said yes, she asked why I won't take this next step. I honestly don't know how to answer that question. I do see a future with Chloe, but I also feel like we should take things at our own pace instead of following some timeline that other people have set. Moving in together is a big deal, and I want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons and at the right time for us. The thing is, I'm really happy with how things are between us right now. We have our own spaces to retreat to when we need alone time, but we also spend plenty of quality time together. I like having my own apartment where I can decompress after work or hang out with friends without having to check in with anyone. I'm not ready to give up that independence yet. Chloe says that attitude shows I'm not ready for a real adult relationship, and maybe she's right. Maybe I am being immature about this whole thing, but I also think there's value in taking things slow and making sure each step feels right before moving to the next one. The worst part is that I can see how much this is hurting her. She's excited about the idea of us building a life together, and my hesitation is making her feel rejected and unwanted. That's not how I feel about her at all, but I don't know how to explain that without sounding like I'm making excuses. I'm torn between not wanting to lose Chloe and not wanting to make a decision I'm not ready for just because of external pressure. I wish we could find some kind of middle ground, but she sees this as a black and white issue. Either I want to move in with her or I don't, and anything in between feels like rejection to her. That story concludes there. This is such a tough situation because both people's feelings are completely valid, but they're on different timelines. Being pressured into a major life decision because someone else's lease is expiring would make anyone panic. Sometimes love isn't enough if the pacing doesn't align, and that's nobody's fault. Let's dive into our next story, about someone whose husband seems to have forgotten how to show appreciation. My husband Daniel never compliments me anymore. It feels like I've become invisible in his eyes. Daniel and I have been married for 5 years, and we were together for 3 years before that. In the beginning of our relationship, he used to make me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. He would compliment my outfits, tell me I looked pretty when I woke up in the morning, and always notice when I did something different with my hair or makeup. Those little moments of appreciation meant so much to me and made me feel seen and valued. But somewhere along the way, all of that just stopped. I can't pinpoint exactly when it happened, but I realized recently that I can't remember the last time Daniel gave me a genuine compliment about anything. Not my appearance, not something I cooked, not an accomplishment at work, nothing. It's like I've become part of the furniture in his eyes. At first I thought maybe I was being too sensitive or expecting too much. We've been together for 8 years total, so maybe the honeymoon phase was just naturally wearing off. But then I started paying attention to how he interacts with other people, and I noticed he still gives compliments to everyone else. He'll tell his sister she looks nice, compliment our friends on their new haircuts, and praise co-workers for their projects. Just not me. I've tried dropping hints by complimenting him more, hoping he would reciprocate. When he wears a shirt I like, I tell him he looks handsome. When he cooks dinner, I make sure to thank him and tell him how good it tastes. When he accomplishes something at work, I celebrate with him and tell him how proud I am. But none of it comes back to me. I've also tried making more of an effort with my appearance to see if that would get his attention. I bought some new clothes, started wearing makeup more often, and even got a pretty dramatic haircut that I was really excited about. When I showed Daniel my new hair, he glanced up from his phone for about 2 seconds and said, "It looks fine," before going back to scrolling. That moment really hurt because I realised how much I'd been craving his approval and validation. I shouldn't need my husband's compliments to feel good about myself, but after 8 years together, his opinion still matters to me more than anyone else's. The lack of compliments has started affecting how I feel about myself overall. I find myself second-guessing outfit choices, wondering if I look okay when we go out together, and feeling generally less confident than I used to. It's like his silence has become this constant, low-level criticism in my head. Last month I decided to bring it up directly. I told Daniel that I missed receiving compliments from him, and that it would mean a lot to me if he could try to notice and appreciate things about me more often. His response was that he doesn't think compliments are necessary in a marriage, because I should already know how he feels about me. He said that when you're married, you don't need to keep doing all the things you did when you were dating because you've already proven your commitment to each other. He said compliments feel fake and forced when you have to ask for them, so what would be the point of him giving them now? I tried to explain that compliments don't have to be fake. They're just about noticing and acknowledging positive things about your partner. I said it would mean so much to me if he would just occasionally tell me I look nice, or that he appreciates something I've done. But he seemed to think I was being needy and asking for empty flattery. Since that conversation, things have gotten even weirder between us. Sometimes I catch him looking at me, like he's trying to think of something complimentary to say, but then nothing comes out. It's like he's going through the motions of trying to notice me, but it feels forced and uncomfortable for both of us. I'm starting to wonder if this is just how marriages naturally evolve, or if we've lost something important that other couples manage to keep alive. When I see other married couples where the partners still seem to genuinely appreciate and admire each other, I feel jealous and sad about what Daniel and I have lost. The hardest part is that I still think Daniel is attractive and wonderful in so many ways. I still notice when he looks particularly handsome, or when he does something thoughtful or impressive. I still feel proud to be his wife and want to tell him all the things I love about him. But that energy doesn't seem to flow both ways anymore, and I don't know how to get it back. I love my husband, and I don't want to end our marriage over something that might seem superficial to other people. But feeling invisible to the person you love most is really lonely, and I'm not sure how to fix this problem when he doesn't see it as a problem at all. That story ends there. Marriage isn't a reason to stop putting in effort, it's a reason to put in more effort. The fact that he still compliments everyone except his wife shows this isn't about being comfortable in the relationship. It's about taking her completely for granted while maintaining social niceties with everyone else. Words of affirmation don't become less important just because you signed a piece of paper. Our next story comes from someone whose girlfriend apparently can't let go of the past. My girlfriend Lily still texts her ex every morning. She says it's harmless, but I feel betrayed. Lily and I have been together for about 10 months now, and for the most part our relationship has been really solid. We have fun together, we communicate well about most things, and I genuinely see a future with her. But there's this one issue that's been eating at me for months, and I don't know how to handle it anymore. Every single morning, like clockwork, Lily texts her ex-boyfriend Marcus. Not just a quick hello, but these long conversations that sometimes go on for hours. She'll be lying in bed next to me, and the first thing she does when she wakes up is reach for her phone and start typing to him. It's become this routine that happens before she even says good morning to me. When I first noticed it, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem controlling or insecure. I figured maybe they had some unfinished business to wrap up, or maybe it was just temporary while they transitioned from being a couple to being friends. But it's been going on for months now, and if anything, it's gotten more frequent and more intimate. I've seen glimpses of their conversations when her phone is sitting on the counter, and they're not talking about practical things like returning belongings or coordinating mutual friends. They're sharing inside jokes, talking about their days, discussing memories they made together, and basically maintaining the emotional intimacy they had when they were dating, just without the physical component. Last week I finally brought it up with Lily. I told her that I felt uncomfortable with how much she communicates with Marcus, especially first thing in the morning, when we're supposed to be starting our day together. She immediately got defensive and said that Marcus is one of her closest friends and that she's not going to cut him out of her life just because they used to date. She explained that they dated for 3 years and built this deep friendship that existed before and during their romantic relationship. She said when they broke up, they both agreed that they wanted to preserve the friendship part of their connection because it was too valuable to lose. She made it sound like I was being unreasonable for expecting her to throw away years of friendship. But here's what bothers me about her explanation. If Marcus is just a friend now, why does she need to text him every single morning before she's even fully awake? Why are their conversations so long and detailed? And why does she get this little smile on her face when she's reading his messages that she doesn't get when she's texting other friends? I tried to explain that it's not about her having male friends or even being friends with an ex in general. It's about the level of daily emotional intimacy she maintains with someone she used to be in love with. I told her that starting every day by connecting with Marcus instead of me makes me feel like I'm competing for her attention and emotional energy. Lily said I was being possessive and that healthy relationships require trust. She said if I really trusted her, I wouldn't feel threatened by her friendship with Marcus. She turned the whole conversation around to make it seem like I was the one with the problem for feeling insecure about their daily communication. She also said that asking her to limit her contact with Marcus would be controlling behaviour and that she's not going to let another man dictate who she can and can't talk to. She said she's learned from past relationships that giving up friendships for romantic partners is a mistake, and she's not going to make that error again. The thing is, I don't want her to give up all her friendships or cut Marcus out of her life completely. I just want some boundaries around how much emotional energy she invests in maintaining their connection. It feels like she's having two relationships, one with me and one with him, and I don't know how to compete with someone who has years of history and inside jokes and shared memories with her. I've started noticing other ways that Marcus is still very present in our relationship. She'll bring up things he said or did in conversations with me. She'll reference trips they took together or experiences they shared. When we're making decisions about where to go or what to do, she'll sometimes mention what Marcus would think, or how he would handle a similar situation. Last weekend we were planning a weekend trip, and she suggested a hiking trail that she and Marcus used to go to together. When I said I'd prefer to find somewhere new that would be just ours, she said I was being weird about her past and that she shouldn't have to pretend her previous relationship never happened. I'm starting to feel like I'm dating both Lily and the ghost of her relationship with Marcus. Every day begins with her connecting with him, and throughout the day, she references their shared history. I don't know how to build something new and special with her when she's constantly maintaining this connection to what they used to have. The worst part is that I can tell she still has feelings for Marcus, even if she won't admit it to herself. The way she lights up when she gets messages from him, the way she talks about him with this fondness in her voice, the way she defends their friendship so fiercely. It doesn't feel like someone who has moved on from a past relationship. I love Lily, and I want to make this work, but I don't know how to handle feeling like the second choice in my own relationship. I don't want to be controlling or possessive, but I also don't want to pretend that daily intimate communication with an ex-partner is normal or healthy for our relationship. That story ends there. Starting every morning by texting your ex, instead of acknowledging your current partner, is relationship suicide in slow motion. She's basically keeping Marcus as her emotional backup plan while using the friendship excuse to avoid accountability. No healthy relationship can survive when someone's heart is still partially invested elsewhere. The fact that she's gaslighting him for having completely normal boundaries shows she knows exactly what she's doing. Let's move to our next story, about someone who discovered their fiancé has been hiding some major financial secrets. My fiancé Mark lied about his debt. I only found out after we got engaged. Mark and I got engaged 3 months ago, and it was honestly one of the happiest moments of my life. We've been together for 2 years, and I felt like I really knew him inside and out. We'd talked about our future together extensively, including our financial goals and how we wanted to handle money as a married couple. That's why discovering the truth about his debt felt like such a betrayal. We'd been having conversations about combining our finances after the wedding and possibly buying a house together within the next few years. During these discussions, Mark always presented himself as being in pretty good financial shape. He said he had some student loans like everyone else, but nothing too serious. He made it sound like his debt was manageable and wouldn't impact our future plans. About a month after we got engaged, we decided to meet with a financial advisor to start planning for our wedding expenses and long-term financial goals. The advisor asked us to bring all of our financial documents so we could get a complete picture of our combined financial situation. That's when I discovered that Mark had been lying to me about his debt for our entire relationship. When we sat down with the advisor and started going through our paperwork, I was shocked to see the real numbers. Mark has over $60,000 in credit card debt, on top of his student loans that are actually much higher than he'd led me to believe. His total debt is close to $100,000, and he's been making minimum payments while the interest keeps accumulating. I sat there in that meeting trying to process what I was hearing while the financial advisor explained how Mark's debt would impact our ability to get a mortgage or make other major financial decisions. It felt surreal, like I was learning about a stranger's financial situation rather than my fiancé's. After the meeting, I asked Mark why he hadn't been honest with me about the extent of his debt. He said he was embarrassed about it and didn't want me to think less of him. He explained that the credit card debt had accumulated during a period when he was unemployed a few years ago, and he'd been struggling to pay it down ever since. He said he'd been planning to tell me eventually, but he wanted to get it more under control first. He thought maybe he could pay down a significant portion of it before we got married, so it wouldn't seem as overwhelming. He apologized for not being upfront about it and said he never meant to deceive me. I tried to be understanding about his embarrassment, but I couldn't get past the fact that he'd been lying to me about something so fundamental for 2 years. We'd made plans together based on false information about our financial situation. I'd been saving money for our wedding and our future house, assuming we were both starting from a much better financial position. The debt itself isn't even the worst part, although it's definitely concerning. It's the fact that he let me make major life decisions without having all the information I needed. When we got engaged, when we started planning our wedding, when we talked about buying a house, he knew I was operating under false assumptions about our financial reality. I started thinking back through our relationship and realized there were signs I'd missed or ignored. Mark was always careful about money in ways that seemed responsible at the time, but now I wonder if it was because he was already stretched thin financially. He'd suggest staying in instead of going out. He'd choose less expensive restaurants. He'd decline group trips with friends. I thought he was just being practical, but maybe he literally couldn't afford these things. I also realized that he'd been paying for things with credit cards more often than I'd noticed. When we'd go out to dinner, or he'd buy me gifts, it was usually on a credit card. I never thought much about it because lots of people prefer using cards for the rewards points, but now I wonder if he was just adding to his debt every time he spent money. The trust issue is what's really eating at me. If Mark could lie about something this significant for 2 years, what else might he be hiding from me? How can I trust him to be honest about other important aspects of our relationship and our future together? Financial honesty is such a basic requirement for a partnership, and he failed that test completely. When I've tried to talk to Mark about my feelings of betrayal, he gets defensive and says he was trying to protect me from worrying about something he planned to handle on his own. He says he loves me and that the debt doesn't change how he feels about me or our relationship. He keeps emphasizing that he was going to tell me eventually and that he never intended for me to find out this way. But the timing of his honesty bothers me too. He only came clean because we were meeting with a financial advisor, and he had no choice. If we hadn't taken that step, how much longer would he have kept lying to me? Would he have told me before our wedding, or would I have discovered it after we were legally bound together? I'm questioning whether I can marry someone who could keep such a significant secret for so long. The debt is manageable if we work together on a plan to pay it down, but the dishonesty feels like a much bigger problem. I don't know how to rebuild trust with someone who let me make life-changing decisions based on lies. That story is finished. Hiding $100,000 in debt from your fiancé is financial fraud disguised as relationship protection. The fact that he only came clean when forced to show documentation proves he was never planning to be honest voluntarily. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership built on trust, and he spent 2 years showing he is incapable of basic honesty about something that directly affects both of their futures. Our next story comes from someone whose wife apparently thinks their home is a community centre. My wife Hannah always invites friends over without asking. I come home to a house full of strangers. Hannah and I have been married for 4 years, and overall we have a really good relationship. She's social and outgoing in ways that I admire, and she's helped me become more comfortable in social situations than I ever was when I was single. The problem is that her social nature has started to feel overwhelming, especially when it comes to our home life. At least 3 times a week, I come home from work to find people I barely know sitting in our living room. Sometimes it's Hannah's co-workers having an impromptu happy hour. Sometimes it's neighbours she invited over for coffee that turned into a dinner party. And sometimes it's friends of friends who just happened to stop by and ended up staying for hours. Don't get me wrong, I like Hannah's friends and I enjoy socialising to a reasonable extent. but our house has started to feel like a public space rather than a private home where I can relax and unwind after work. I never know when I'm going to walk through the front door and be expected to be on for a group of people I wasn't prepared to entertain. The issue isn't that Hannah invites people over, it's that she never asks me first or gives me any heads up about it. I'll be driving home from work looking forward to a quiet evening, maybe cooking dinner together and watching a movie, only to find our kitchen full of people I'm meeting for the first time. Suddenly I'm expected to be a gracious host when all I wanted was to change into comfortable clothes and decompress. Last week I had a particularly stressful day at work and was really looking forward to just being home with Hannah. When I walked in, there were 6 people I'd never met before, sitting around our dining table playing some kind of card game. Hannah introduced me cheerfully and expected me to join in like this was something we'd planned together. I tried to be polite and social for about an hour, but I was exhausted and just wanted these strangers out of my house. When I quietly asked Hannah how much longer they were planning to stay, she got annoyed with me and said I was being antisocial and rude to her friends. I've tried talking to Hannah about this pattern multiple times. I've explained that I need some advance notice when she's planning to have people over, both so I can mentally prepare and so I can let her know if it's not a good day for me to be around a lot of people. I've also asked if we could designate certain days as just us days where we don't have any social obligations. Hannah's response is always that I'm being too rigid and that spontaneous socializing is one of the things she loves most about life. She says that some of her best memories are from unexpected gatherings that happened organically, and she doesn't want to lose that spontaneity by having to plan everything in advance. She also says that our friends and neighbours should feel welcome in our home, and that creating too many rules around when people can come over would make our house feel less warm and inviting. She thinks I'm being antisocial, and that I should appreciate having such an active social life instead of complaining about it. But it's not just about being social or antisocial, it's about having some control over my own living space and being able to predict what my evenings are going to look like. When I get home from work, I want to know whether I'm going to be able to shower and put on sweatpants, or whether I need to stay in work clothes and be entertaining for the next 4 hours. The unpredictability is what's really wearing on me. I never know if I'm going to have a quiet night with my wife, or if I'm going to be hosting a dinner party for people I barely know. I can't make plans for how I want to spend my evening because I don't know what the situation at home is going to be. I've also started to feel like Hannah cares more about being seen as the fun, social wife than she does about my comfort and needs. She loves being known as the person whose house is always open, whose friends can always count on her for a good time. But maintaining that reputation comes at the cost of my peace of mind and our private time together. Sometimes I'll come home and Hannah will already be cooking dinner for however many people have shown up, using groceries we bought for just the 2 of us. Our food budget has gotten stretched because we're constantly feeding unexpected guests, and our house is always messy because there are constantly people coming and going. I've suggested compromises like asking Hannah to text me during the day if she's thinking about inviting people over so I can let her know if I'm up for it, or setting aside certain evenings each week that are guaranteed to be just us. But she sees any attempt to structure our social life as me trying to control her friendships and stifle her personality. Last month things came to a head when I came home to find people using our bedroom to store their coats and purses. Our private space had been turned into a coat closet for Hannah's impromptu dinner party. I felt like there was nowhere in my own house that was off limits to strangers. I love Hannah's social energy, and I don't want to change who she is fundamentally, but I also need to feel like I have some say in how our shared living space is used. Right now, it feels like she makes all the decisions about our social calendar, and I'm just expected to go along with whatever she's planned. That story ends there. Having your home turned into a revolving door for random people without any input is genuinely exhausting. She's prioritizing her social reputation over her husband's basic need for a peaceful sanctuary after work. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership where both people get a say in major decisions, but she's treating their home like her personal entertainment venue. Moving to our next story about someone dealing with a boyfriend who apparently thinks flirting is customer service. My boyfriend Jacob flirts with waitresses in front of me. He says he's just being nice, but I feel humiliated. Jacob and I have been together for about 8 months, and most of the time I really enjoy his company. He's charming and funny, and he has this natural charisma that drew me to him in the first place. But that same charisma becomes a problem every time we go out to eat, because he uses it to flirt with every waitress, hostess, and female staff member we encounter. It started on our second date when we went to this Italian restaurant downtown. From the moment our waitress approached the table, Jacob turned on this flirtatious charm that I hadn't seen him use with me since our first date. He complimented her dress, made jokes about the menu, asked personal questions about how long she'd been working there, and basically gave her his full attention for the entire meal. At first I thought maybe he was just being friendly and social. Some people are naturally more engaging with service staff, and I didn't want to read too much into it. But as we continued dating and going out together, I realised this wasn't just friendliness. This was full-on flirting, complete with lingering eye contact, playful teasing, and the kind of smile he used to reserve for me. The worst part is watching how these interactions affect the waitresses. Some of them clearly think he's single and start flirting back, leaning closer to the table when they take our order, laughing extra hard at his jokes, and finding excuses to come back to our table more often than necessary. I sit there feeling invisible while my boyfriend charms another woman right in front of me. Other waitresses seem uncomfortable with his attention, especially when they realise I'm his girlfriend. I can see them trying to redirect the conversation back to the food or service, but Jacob doesn't take the hint. He keeps pushing for personal connection and treating every interaction like it's the beginning of a romantic comedy. I've brought this up with Jacob multiple times, and his response is always the same. He says he's just being nice and that friendly service deserves friendly interaction in return. He says I'm being jealous and insecure for reading romantic interest into what he considers basic social politeness. He also says that his friendliness often results in better service and sometimes even free drinks or desserts. So there's a practical benefit to being charming with restaurant staff. He makes it sound like I'm being ungrateful for complaining about behaviour that sometimes benefits both of us. But I know the difference between being polite to service staff and actively flirting with them. When Jacob talks to male waiters, he's perfectly pleasant but professional. He doesn't ask about their personal lives, he doesn't make prolonged eye contact, and he doesn't use the same teasing tone he uses with women. The difference in his behaviour is so obvious that I can't believe he pretends not to see it. Last weekend we went out for brunch with another couple, and Jacob's behaviour was so over the top that our friends noticed it too. Our waitress was probably in her early 20s, and Jacob spent the entire meal making her laugh and compliment her energy and enthusiasm. When she brought our check, he told her she'd made his day brighter just by being herself. After she walked away, our friend Sarah looked at me with this sympathetic expression and asked if Jacob always talked to waitresses like that. I was mortified that other people were noticing and probably wondering why I put up with it. Jacob just laughed and said he believed in spreading positivity wherever he went. The humiliation is what really gets to me. I sit there watching my boyfriend give his charm and attention to other women while treating me like I'm invisible. He'll spend 20 minutes making our waitress feel special, then barely make conversation with me for the rest of the meal. It's like he saves his best self for strangers and gives me whatever energy is left over. I've started dreading going out to restaurants because I know I'm going to spend the evening feeling embarrassed and ignored. What should be quality time together turns into me watching Jacob perform for other women while I sit there like a prop in his one-man show. When I try to participate in his conversations with waitresses, either by adding to the conversation or redirecting his attention back to me, he gets annoyed and says, I'm being possessive. He makes it seem like I'm the problem for not wanting to share his attention with every woman who brings us our food. I've also noticed that Jacob remembers details about waitresses from restaurants we've been to before. He'll ask about their classes if they mentioned being in school, or remember their names from previous visits. He puts effort into building these mini relationships with women he sees for 20 minutes every few months, but sometimes I feel like he pays less attention to the details of my life. The whole thing makes me question whether Jacob is really satisfied with our relationship, or if he's constantly looking for validation and attention from other women. If he needs to flirt with every waitress we encounter, what does that say about how he feels about me? I love Jacob, and I don't want to be the kind of girlfriend who polices his every interaction with other women. But I also don't want to feel humiliated and ignored every time we go out to eat. I just want to feel like his priority when we're spending time together, not like I'm competing with every woman who happens to be working that day. That story concludes there. Flirting with service workers while your girlfriend sits there watching is peak disrespectful behaviour. He knows exactly what he's doing, and hiding behind the politeness excuse just makes it worse. The fact that he treats male servers completely differently proves this has nothing to do with being friendly, and everything to do with seeking attention from other women. No one should have to sit through dinner feeling like they're invisible while their partner performs for strangers. Our next story takes us into the world of someone whose girlfriend apparently lives a double life, depending on her audience. My girlfriend Olivia pretends we're not dating around her friends. She introduces me as just a friend in public. Olivia and I have been together for about 6 months now, and when we're alone together, everything feels perfect. She's affectionate, we have great conversations, and she talks about future plans like we're definitely a long-term couple. But the moment we're around other people, especially her friends, it's like our relationship doesn't exist. The first time I really noticed this was about 2 months ago when we went to a party thrown by one of her college friends. I was excited to meet her friend group and be introduced as her boyfriend, but when we arrived, Olivia introduced me to everyone as just her friend. Not even a close friend or a special friend, just a friend who happened to be there with her. I figured maybe she was just being private about her personal life, or maybe she didn't want to make a big deal about having a boyfriend at someone else's party. But then I watched her spend the entire evening acting like we barely knew each other. She mingled separately from me, didn't include me in conversations with her friends, and even when we were standing in the same group, she'd talk to everyone except me. At one point during the party, a guy she knew from college was clearly flirting with her, and she flirted back. Nothing too serious, but definitely the kind of playful interaction that would be inappropriate if people knew she had a boyfriend. When I brought it up later, she said I was being paranoid and that she was just being social. Since then, this pattern has repeated itself every time we're in social situations with her friends. She introduces me as a friend, keeps physical distance from me, and acts like we're just casual acquaintances who happen to show up to the same event. Meanwhile, I'm standing there feeling like an idiot because I want to put my arm around her or hold her hand, but I know she'll pull away. I've started to dread meeting her friends or going to events with her because I know I'm going to spend the evening feeling confused and rejected. It's like being in a relationship in private, but being single in public. And I don't understand why she needs to keep our romantic connection such a secret. When I've asked Olivia about this directly, she says her friend group is complicated and she doesn't want to deal with drama about her dating life. She says some of her friends have opinions about her relationships and she prefers to keep her romantic life separate from her social life until she's sure about where things are going. But we've been together for 6 months, and I thought we were sure about where things are going. We've talked about moving in together, we've met each other's families, and we spend most nights together. I don't understand how she can be uncertain about our relationship status when we're basically living like a couple already. She also says that her friends can be judgmental about the guys she dates, and she wants to protect our relationship from their opinions until she feels more confident about us. But that explanation doesn't make sense to me either, because how can she get more confident about us if she's not willing to publicly acknowledge that we exist. The secrecy is starting to make me feel like she's ashamed of me, or like I'm not good enough to be introduced as her boyfriend. I keep wondering what it is about me that makes her want to hide our relationship from people who are important to her. Am I not attractive enough, successful enough, or interesting enough to be worthy of public acknowledgement? Am I someone she's proud to be with? Last weekend, the situation got even worse when we went to her friend's birthday dinner. There were about 8 people there, and when someone asked Olivia if she was seeing anyone, she said no. She looked right at me while she said it, like she was daring me to contradict her. I sat there feeling completely humiliated while everyone started trying to set her up with guys they knew. One of her friends even suggested that maybe I would be a good match for her, since we seemed to get along well and had been spending time together lately. The whole table started discussing whether Olivia and I would make a good couple while we sat there pretending to consider the possibility. It was surreal and painful, and I wanted to disappear. After dinner, I told Olivia that I couldn't keep doing this. I said that being treated like a dirty secret was destroying my self-esteem and making me question everything about our relationship. I asked her what she was so afraid of and why she couldn't just be honest with her friends about us. She got upset and said I was putting too much pressure on her and that relationships don't have to be public to be real. She said she cares about me, and that should be enough, regardless of what she tells other people. She made it sound like I was being needy and insecure for wanting basic acknowledgement of our relationship. But it's not about needing public validation or wanting to show off. It's about feeling like my girlfriend is willing to claim me as her boyfriend when it matters. When we're alone, she acts like she's crazy about me, but the moment other people are around, she treats me like I'm nothing special. I've started wondering if maybe she's keeping her options open by staying publicly single. If her friends don't know she has a boyfriend, then she can flirt with other guys without anyone thinking it's inappropriate. Maybe the secrecy isn't about protecting our relationship. Maybe it's about protecting her ability to explore other possibilities. The whole situation is making me feel crazy and insecure in ways I've never experienced before. In previous relationships, meeting my girlfriend's friends and being included in her social circle was a natural progression that happened without drama. But with Olivia, I feel like I'm asking for something unreasonable when I want to be acknowledged as her partner. I don't know how much longer I can pretend to be okay with this arrangement. I love Olivia and I want to be with her, but I also want to be with someone who's proud to be with me. Right now, I feel like I'm in a relationship that only exists behind closed doors, and that's not sustainable for me long term. That story ends there. Being someone's secret for 6 months isn't a relationship. It's a situationship with delusions of grandeur. She's keeping him hidden so she can maintain the appearance of being single while getting all the benefits of having a boyfriend. The fact that she denied being in a relationship right to his face shows exactly how little respect she has for him and their connection. Let's move to our next story about someone whose partner seems emotionally unavailable in the most fundamental way. My partner Ryan never says I love you first. It's always me initiating, and it feels one-sided. Ryan and I have been together for almost a year now, and we've been saying I love you to each other for about 4 months. The problem is that I'm always the one who says it first in every conversation, every text exchange, every phone call. He always says it back, and he seems to mean it, but he never initiates those words on his own. At first I didn't think much about it. Some people are just less verbally expressive about their feelings, and I figured Ryan might be one of those people who shows love through actions rather than words. He's thoughtful in a lot of ways. He remembers things that are important to me, and he makes effort to spend quality time together. But as time has gone on, I've started to feel like I'm always the one putting my heart on the line first. It's not just about the words themselves, it's about what they represent. When someone says I love you first, they're taking an emotional risk and making themselves vulnerable. They're putting their feelings out there without knowing for sure that they'll be reciprocated. I feel like I'm always the one taking that risk while Ryan gets to play it safe by just responding. I've started paying attention to the pattern in all of our conversations. Whether we're saying goodbye after a date, ending a phone call, or texting each other goodnight, I'm always the one who says I love you first. He always responds with I love you too, but never just I love you. That little word too makes all the difference because it shows he's responding rather than initiating. Last week I decided to experiment by not saying I love you first to see what would happen. We went on a date, had a great time together, and when he dropped me off at my apartment, I just said goodnight and gave him a kiss. He said goodnight back, and that was it. No I love you, no expression of affection beyond the physical goodbye. I tried the same thing over the next few days with our text conversations and phone calls. Instead of ending with my usual I love you, I would just say goodnight or talk to you tomorrow. Ryan would respond normally, but never added any words of love or affection on his own. After about a week of this, I started to feel really sad about the whole situation. Here I was, testing my boyfriend to see if he would express love for me without prompting, and he was failing the test completely. It made me wonder if he actually loves me or if he just goes along with it when I express love for him. When I brought this up with Ryan, he seemed genuinely confused by my concern. He said of course he loves me, and that he thought I knew that. He pointed out that he says it back every time I say it, and he asked why it mattered who said it first as long as we both meant it. I tried to explain that always being the one to initiate expressions of love makes me feel like I care more about the relationship than he does. I said that sometimes I want to hear him say he loves me without having to prompt him to do it. I want to know that he has those feelings independently, not just in response to mine. Ryan said he's never been someone who's comfortable with verbal expressions of emotion, and that he shows his love through actions instead of words. He said he thought his behaviour demonstrated how much he cares about me, and that he didn't realise I needed more verbal affirmation. But the thing is, he's perfectly comfortable saying, I love you back to me. It's not like he struggles with the words themselves or feels awkward expressing affection verbally. He just doesn't seem to have the impulse to say it first, and that makes me feel like maybe those feelings don't occur to him naturally. I've started to overthink every I love you exchange we have. When I say it and he responds, I find myself wondering if he actually felt love for me in that moment, or if he's just following the script of what he's supposed to say when your girlfriend tells you she loves you. The automatic nature of his responses makes them feel less meaningful. I also started noticing that Ryan doesn't really initiate other expressions of affection either. I'm usually the one who suggests spending time together, who brings up future plans, who says I miss you when we're apart. He participates in all of these conversations enthusiastically, but he doesn't seem to initiate them on his own. It's making me feel like I'm more invested in this relationship than he is, even though his actions suggest that he cares about me. He makes time for me. He's reliable and supportive. He introduces me to his friends and family. But emotionally, it feels like he's always following my lead, rather than having his own independent feelings about us. I don't want to have to train my boyfriend to say he loves me, or to teach him how to express affection. I want those things to come naturally, because he genuinely feels them. But I'm not sure if Ryan is just emotionally reserved, or if he's actually not as invested in our relationship as I am. The whole situation is making me question whether we're compatible long term. I'm someone who needs regular verbal affirmation and emotional expression in a relationship. If Ryan is someone who struggles with that naturally, maybe we're just not a good match, even if we care about each other. That story concludes there. Being the only one who ever initiates expressions of love is emotionally exhausting and would make anyone feel insecure about where they stand. If someone truly loves you, those words and feelings should bubble up naturally sometimes, not just appear on command as a response. It's like being in a relationship with an emotional vending machine where you have to insert your feelings first to get anything back. Our final story for tonight comes from someone whose husband has decided their marriage comes with separate sleeping arrangements. My husband Lucas refuses to sleep in the same bed. He says he just sleeps better alone. Lucas and I have been married for 3 years, and up until about 6 months ago, we shared a bed like most married couples. We had the usual minor issues about blanket stealing and different sleep schedules, but nothing that seemed like a major problem. Then one night, Lucas announced that he was going to start sleeping in the guest room because he thought we'd both get better rest with more space. At first I thought it was temporary. Maybe he was going through a stressful period at work and needed better sleep for a few weeks. But 6 months later, he's still in the guest room every single night. And whenever I bring up the possibility of him coming back to our bedroom, he gets defensive and says he sleeps so much better alone. The thing is, I don't sleep better alone. I miss having my husband next to me. I miss the intimacy of falling asleep together and waking up together. I miss the random middle-of-the-night conversations and the comfortable feeling of sharing that space with the person I love most. Sleeping alone every night makes me feel lonely and disconnected from Lucas, even though he's just down the hall. When I've tried to explain this to Lucas, he says I'm being too emotional about something practical. He says that sharing a bed is just a social convention, and that there's nothing wrong with married couples sleeping separately if it means they both get better rest. He makes it sound like I'm being irrational for wanting to share a bed with my own husband. He's also started talking about how much more energy he has in the mornings and how much better he feels during the day now that he's getting quality sleep. He acts like our previous sleeping arrangement was some kind of sacrifice he was making for my benefit, rather than something normal that most couples do because they enjoy being close to each other. I've suggested compromises like getting a bigger bed or trying different mattresses that might accommodate both of our sleep preferences better. But Lucas says he's already found a solution that works for him, and he doesn't see why we need to change something that's working just because I have emotional attachments to sharing a bed. The separate sleeping arrangements have started affecting our physical intimacy too. When we slept in the same bed, physical affection happened naturally throughout the night and in the mornings. Now, any physical intimacy has to be planned and initiated deliberately because we're not sharing the same space regularly. It's also changed the rhythm of our evenings and mornings. We used to have this natural transition into sleep where we talk about our days, make plans for tomorrow, and gradually wind down together. Now Lucas just announces he's going to bed and disappears into the guest room, leaving me to go to bed alone in what feels like an empty house. I've started to wonder if the sleeping arrangement is really about sleep quality or if Lucas is pulling away from me emotionally. And this is just the most obvious symptom. The fact that he seems so much happier sleeping alone makes me worry that maybe he's happier being apart from me in general. When I brought up this concern, Lucas said I was reading too much into a practical decision and making it about our relationship when it's really just about sleep. But how can sleeping separately every night not be about our relationship? The bedroom is supposed to be our shared space, the place where we're most intimate and connected. I feel like I'm losing an important part of what makes us feel like a married couple, rather than just roommates who happen to be legally connected. That story ends there. Choosing to sleep separately every night without discussing it as a couple first is a pretty clear sign that someone is checking out of the intimacy part of marriage. While some couples do sleep separately for legitimate health reasons, the way he unilaterally made this decision and refuses to compromise suggests this is about more than just sleep quality. That wraps up tonight's collection of relationship chaos from the depths of Reddit. These stories remind us that communication, honesty, and basic respect are the foundation of any healthy relationship. And when those elements are missing, things can spiral into some truly wild situations pretty quickly. Whether you're happily single and counting your blessings, or in a relationship and suddenly feeling grateful for your partner's quirks, these next stories are going to give you some serious perspective on what could be going wrong behind closed doors. Let's dive into another one that will make you think twice about dating someone who treats your relationship like content creation. My girlfriend Mia belittles my career. She says my job isn't real work. I'm 27 and I work as a freelance graphic designer. It's taken me about 4 years to build up a steady client base, And while the income can be inconsistent month to month, I'm finally at a point where I'm making decent money doing something I genuinely love. My girlfriend Mia is 25 and works as a nurse at the local hospital. She has a very traditional 9 to 5 schedule with benefits and a steady paycheck. From the beginning of our relationship about 10 months ago, Mia has made little comments about my work situation that felt dismissive. She'd ask when I was going to get a real job or suggest that maybe I should look into something more stable. At first, I thought she was just concerned about my financial security, which I could understand since freelance work can be unpredictable. But over time, her comments have become more frequent and more cutting. She refers to my work as playing on the computer all day and acts like what I do isn't legitimate employment. When people ask what I do for work at social gatherings, she'll sometimes jump in before I can answer and say something like, "He's still figuring that out," or "He does some computer stuff from home." Last week I landed a really big contract with a company that's going to pay me more in 3 months than I made in the previous 6 months combined. I was excited to share the news with Mia because it felt like validation that my career path was finally paying off. Instead of congratulating me, she said, "That's nice, but what happens when the project ends? You'll just be back to scrambling for work again." She constantly compares my work situation to hers, pointing out that she has job security, health insurance, and a predictable schedule. She'll say things like, "At least when I leave work, I'm actually done for the day," or "I don't have to worry about whether I'll have work next month." She makes it sound like I chose the inferior path and she chose the responsible one. The thing that really bothers me is that she doesn't seem to understand or appreciate the creative aspect of what I do. When I show her projects I'm proud of, or explain the problem solving that went into a design, she'll glance at it for 2 seconds and say, "That's nice," before changing the subject. It's like she sees pictures, my work as just random on a screen, instead of something that requires skill and creativity. She's also started making suggestions about what I should do instead. She thinks I should apply for marketing positions at hospitals or other healthcare facilities because then I'd have real benefits and job security. When I explain that I don't want to work in a corporate environment and that I love the freedom of freelancing, she says I'm being unrealistic about adult responsibilities. Last month, when I had a slow week with fewer projects, Mia made several comments about how this is exactly why freelancing isn't sustainable. She said I should use the downtime to apply for permanent positions instead of just waiting for more freelance work to come in. She acted like the slow period proved her point about my career choice being irresponsible. The worst part is how she talks about my work when we're arguing about other things. If we have a disagreement about money or plans, she'll bring up my unstable job situation as if it's the root of all our problems. She'll say things like, "Maybe if you had a real career, we could make actual plans," or "I can't rely on someone who doesn't even know what they'll be doing next month." I've tried explaining to Mia that freelancing requires just as much work and dedication as any traditional job. Maybe more, because I have to constantly find new clients and manage all aspects of the business myself. I've shown her my income from the past year to prove that I'm making good money, but she focuses on the months that were slower instead of the overall success. She also doesn't seem to understand that I chose this path because I value creative fulfillment and flexibility over traditional job security. I'd rather work on projects I'm passionate about and have control over my schedule than sit in an office doing work that doesn't inspire me. But when I try to explain this, she says I'm being immature and that passion doesn't pay bills. I love Mia and I want our relationship to work, but her constant criticism of my career is starting to affect my confidence and my enjoyment of work that I used to love. I find myself second-guessing decisions about projects or feeling defensive about my success instead of just enjoying it. It's like having someone constantly tell you that the thing you're proud of isn't actually worth being proud of. I don't need Mia to fully understand my career path, but I need her to respect it and support me instead of constantly undermining my choices. Right now, It feels like she's waiting for me to admit that she was right all along, and that I should give up on freelancing to get a traditional job. But I don't want to give up something I love, just to prove that I can conform to her idea of what adult employment should look like. That story ends there. Imagine being with someone who spends every day saving lives and still finds time to make you feel worthless about your career. She's not concerned about his financial stability. She's concerned about how his non-traditional job reflects on her. The fact that she interrupts him at social gatherings to diminish his work shows this is about control and status, not love or partnership. Moving to our next story, about someone whose boyfriend apparently thinks borrowing means taking without permission. My boyfriend Ethan borrowed my car without asking. I woke up and it was gone. I've been dating Ethan for about 8 months now, and overall he's been a really good boyfriend. He's thoughtful, funny, and we have great chemistry together. We don't live together yet, but we spend most weekends at each other's places and have keys to each other's apartments. I thought the key exchange was about convenience and trust, but apparently Ethan interpreted it differently than I did. Yesterday morning I woke up and went to my kitchen to make coffee, and when I looked out the window, my car wasn't in its usual parking spot. My first thought was that it had been stolen, so I ran outside in my pyjamas to double check. Sure enough, my car was completely gone. I was about to call the police when I decided to call Ethan first to see if maybe he'd seen something or could help me figure out what happened. When Ethan answered the phone, he sounded confused about why I was calling so early. I explained that my car was missing and asked if he'd heard anything strange during the night. That's when he said, "Oh, I borrowed it to run some errands this morning. I didn't want to wake you up by calling so early." I was completely speechless. He had taken my car without asking and didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with that. I asked him why he didn't ask permission first, or at least leave me a note so I wouldn't panic when I found it missing. He said he figured it would be fine since I wasn't using it and he had my spare key. He made it sound like I was being unreasonable for expecting him to ask before taking my car. He said he was planning to bring it back before I woke up, but his errands took longer than expected. When I told him I was upset about the situation, he got defensive and said he was just trying to be considerate by not waking me up. He said most girlfriends would be happy to help their boyfriends out, and he didn't understand why I was making such a big deal about it. He kept emphasizing that he was going to bring it back and that he wasn't trying to steal it or anything. But the issue isn't whether he was planning to return it. The issue is that he took my car without asking permission first. Even if we're dating and even if he has my key, my car is still my property, and he should have gotten consent before using it. The fact that he thought having my apartment key somehow gave him permission to take my car shows a fundamental misunderstanding of boundaries. I tried to explain this to Ethan, but he said I was overreacting and that couples share things all the time. He pointed out that I'd borrowed his jacket before and that he uses my Netflix account, so he didn't see how this was different. I had to explain that borrowing a jacket with permission and taking someone's car without asking are completely different levels of boundary crossing. He also said that since we're in a serious relationship, we should be able to use each other's things without having to ask permission for every little thing. He made it sound like requiring consent before taking my car was a sign that I didn't trust him or wasn't committed to our relationship. He turned the whole conversation around to make me feel like I was the problem for being upset about his behaviour. The thing that really bothers me is that Ethan didn't seem to understand why I was scared when I couldn't find my car. I genuinely thought it had been stolen, and I was panicking about having to deal with insurance claims and police reports and figuring out how to get to work. He put me through that stress just because he didn't want to send a simple text asking if he could borrow my car. When I pointed this out, he said he was sorry I was scared, but that I should have known he wouldn't let anything bad happen to my car. Yet he said if I'd just trusted him and assumed there was a logical explanation instead of immediately panicking, the whole situation could have been avoided. Again, he was making it seem like my reaction was the problem instead of his action. I also found out that Ethan had driven my car to run errands that weren't emergencies. He went to the grocery store, stopped by his friend's house to drop something off, and got his hair cut. These were all things he could have planned ahead for, or asked me about the night before. It's not like he had some urgent situation that required immediate transportation. When Ethan finally brought my car back, he seemed annoyed that I was still upset about the whole thing. He said he'd apologised and that he didn't understand what else I wanted him to do. He made it clear that he thought I was being dramatic and that this whole incident should have been forgotten by now. But I can't just forget about it because it shows me that Ethan doesn't respect my boundaries or my property. If he thinks it's okay to take my car without asking, what else might he think it's okay to do without my permission? The fact that he used my trust and my spare key to do something I never consented to makes me question whether he understands the difference between intimacy and entitlement. I love Ethan, and I don't want to break up over this, but I need him to understand why his behaviour was wrong and to commit to asking permission before using my things in the future. Right now, he seems to think that being in a relationship gives him automatic access to everything I own, and that's not how healthy partnerships work. That story is finished. Taking someone's car without permission isn't borrowing, it's theft with the intention to return. The fact that he made her feel crazy for being upset about waking up to find her car gone shows he has zero understanding of boundaries or basic respect. Having a key to someone's apartment doesn't give you access to their entire life and possessions. Let's move to another story about someone whose wife wants to restructure their entire financial relationship. My wife Zoe wants separate bank accounts. She says it's about independence, but I feel suspicious. Zoe and I have been married for 3 years, and up until last month, we've always shared our finances completely. We have joint checking and savings accounts, and we've always made financial decisions together as a team. It's worked well for us because we both contribute to our household income, and we've never had major disagreements about money. But suddenly Zoe wants to change our entire financial arrangement, and I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than she's telling me. It started about 6 weeks ago when Zoe brought up the idea of opening separate checking accounts in addition to our joint accounts. She said she'd been reading articles about financial independence in marriage and thought it would be healthier for us to each have some money that we could spend without having to discuss it with the other person. She framed it as wanting more autonomy and less need to coordinate every purchase. At first, her reasoning seemed logical. We do sometimes have to check with each other before buying things, and there have been a few times when one of us wanted to make a purchase that the other person thought was unnecessary. Having some separate fun money could eliminate those minor conflicts and give us both more freedom for spontaneous purchases. But then Zoe started talking about separating more than just fun money. She suggested that we should each be responsible for certain bills and expenses, and that we should only use the joint account for shared expenses, like rent and groceries. She wanted to split up our paychecks so that a certain percentage goes into joint accounts and the rest goes into our individual accounts. When I asked her why she wanted to make such a dramatic change to something that was already working for us, she said she'd realised that she'd lost some of her financial independence when we got married. She said she wanted to feel more in control of her own money and less like she had to justify every purchase to me. She made it sound like our current system was somehow oppressive or controlling. But I've never tried to control Zoe's spending or made her justify reasonable purchases. We discuss major expenses together because that's what married couples do. But I've never given her a hard time about buying clothes or going out with friends or anything like that. Her characterization of our financial relationship didn't match my experience of how we actually handle money. I started paying more attention to Zoe's spending habits and realized that she's been making more purchases than usual over the past few months. Nothing huge, but more frequent online shopping, more dinners out with friends, more expensive beauty products. When I mentioned noticing the increased spending, she got defensive and said that was exactly why she wanted separate accounts, so she wouldn't have to deal with me monitoring her purchases. The thing that really made me suspicious was when Zoe suggested that we should keep the details of our separate accounts private from each other. She said the whole point of financial independence was not having to report to your spouse about every transaction. But we've always been transparent about money, and the idea of having secret spending feels like a big departure from the trust we've built together. I asked Zoe if there was something specific she wanted to buy, or some financial goal she was working toward that was motivating this change. She said no, that it was just about the principle of maintaining individual autonomy within marriage. But her answers felt vague and rehearsed, like she'd been preparing for this conversation for a while. Last week I discovered something that made me even more concerned about Zoe's motivations. I was looking through our joint credit card statement to check for fraudulent charges, and I noticed several purchases at stores and restaurants that I didn't recognise. When I asked Zoe about them, she said she'd been treating her co-workers to lunch more often and buying gifts for friends' birthdays and celebrations. The amounts weren't huge, but they added up to several $100s over the past month. What bothered me wasn't the money itself, but the fact that Zoe had been spending significant amounts on things she hadn't mentioned to me. It made me wonder if the separate accounts request was her way of hiding spending that she knew I might have questions about. When I brought up my concerns about the unexplained purchases, Zoe got angry and said this was exactly the kind of financial micromanaging she wanted to avoid. She said she shouldn't have to account for every dollar she spends, especially when it's her money from her job. She made it sound like I was being controlling and suspicious for wanting to understand where our money was going. But it's not about controlling her spending, it's about understanding why she suddenly wants to hide financial information from me after 3 years of complete transparency. The timing feels suspicious, coming right after I noticed increased spending on things she hadn't discussed with me. It feels like she wants separate accounts, so she can continue spending money without having to explain what it's for. I've tried to compromise by suggesting that we could each have small individual accounts for personal spending, while maintaining joint accounts for major expenses. But Zoe wants much more separation than that. She wants to split our finances almost completely, with only basic shared expenses coming from joint accounts. It's a level of separation that feels more like roommates than married partners. I love Zoe, and I want her to feel financially empowered, but I'm worried that this change is motivated by something she's not telling me about. The secrecy around the separate accounts and her defensive reaction to any questions about spending makes me feel like she's planning to hide something from me. I don't know if she's planning a major purchase, dealing with debt I don't know about, or just wanting more freedom to spend without oversight. Right now, I feel like I have to choose between agreeing to a financial arrangement that makes me uncomfortable or being labelled as controlling for wanting to maintain the transparency we've always had. Either way, this whole situation has created tension in our marriage that wasn't there before. That story concludes there. Suddenly wanting financial secrecy after years of transparency isn't about independence. It's about hiding something. The timing of unexplained purchases followed immediately by demands for separate secret accounts would make anyone suspicious. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership, and partnerships require honesty about the resources you're managing together. Moving on to someone whose partner apparently thinks love means isolation. My partner Ava guilt trips me for seeing friends. Whenever I go out, she says I don't care about her. I've been with Ava for about 7 months now, and when it's just the two of us, our relationship feels really strong. We have great conversations, we laugh together constantly, and I genuinely enjoy spending time with her. But whenever I want to spend time with my friends, Ava makes me feel like I'm choosing them over her, even when that's not the case at all. This pattern started about 3 months into our relationship. I had plans to meet up with my college buddies for our monthly poker night, something I'd been doing for years before I even met Ava. When I mentioned I was going out that Friday, she got quiet and said she was disappointed because she'd been looking forward to spending the evening together. I offered to skip poker and stay home with her, but she said no, that I should go have fun with my friends. But throughout the week, leading up to poker night, Ava kept making little comments about how she wished we could spend Friday together. She'd mention things we could do instead, Or say she was going to be lonely at home by herself. By the time Friday came around, I felt so guilty about leaving her that I almost cancelled my plans. When I did go out, I couldn't fully enjoy myself because I kept thinking about Ava at home feeling sad. This same pattern has repeated itself every time I make plans with friends. Ava never directly tells me I can't go out, but she makes it clear that she's upset about it. She'll say things like, "I guess you'd rather be with them than me," or "It must be nice to have friends who are more important than your girlfriend." She always frames it like I'm choosing my friends over our relationship. Last month, my best friend from high school was visiting from out of state, and I made plans to spend Saturday afternoon with him. Ava knew about this visit weeks in advance, and I thought she was okay with it. But the night before, she started crying and saying she felt like I never prioritized her anymore. She said it hurt her feelings that I was so excited to see my friend when I didn't show that same enthusiasm about spending time with her. I tried to explain that it's different because I see Ava all the time, but I rarely get to see this particular friend. She said that response proved that I took her for granted and that I only got excited about people I didn't see often. She made it sound like my excitement about seeing an old friend was somehow an insult to our relationship. When I did go out with my friend that Saturday, Ava texted me multiple times, asking when I'd be home and saying she missed me. She sent photos of herself looking sad and said she was having a boring day without me. I ended up cutting my visit short because I felt so guilty about leaving her alone. I've started to notice that Ava doesn't really have close friends of her own. She has co-workers she occasionally talks to and some acquaintances from college, but she doesn't have the kind of tight-knit friend group that I do. When I've suggested that she make plans with her own friends when I'm out with mine, she says she doesn't need other people the way I do because she has me. She's also started making comments about my friends that feel like subtle criticisms. She'll say things like, "Your poker friends seem kind of immature," or "I don't understand what you have in common with them anymore." She never says anything directly negative, but she implies that my friendships are somehow beneath me, or that I've outgrown them. The guilt trips have gotten more intense over time. Last week, when I mentioned wanting to go to a baseball game with some guys from work, Ava said she couldn't believe I'd rather sit in uncomfortable seats with co-workers than spend quality time with her at home. She said it made her feel like she wasn't enough for me, and that maybe I wasn't as serious about our relationship as she was. I've tried having honest conversations with Ava about this pattern, but she always turns it around to make it seem like I'm the one with the problem. She says if I really loved her, I wouldn't want to be away from her so much. She says couples in serious relationships should want to spend most of their free time together, and that my desire to maintain separate friendships shows I'm not fully committed to us. But I don't think wanting to see friends occasionally means I'm not committed to my relationship. I love Ava and I want to spend time with her, but I also value my friendships and don't want to lose them just because I'm in a romantic relationship. I think it's healthy for couples to have some independence and separate interests. The worst part is that I've started turning down invitations from friends because I know Ava will be upset about it. I've missed birthday parties, cancelled plans, and declined invitations to things I really wanted to do because I didn't want to deal with her guilt trips and sadness. I'm starting to feel isolated from people who used to be important parts of my life. When I've pointed out that I've been seeing friends less often since we started dating, Ava says that's natural when you're in a serious relationship. She says my priorities should shift toward her and our future together, and that maintaining the same level of friendship involvement I had when I was single shows I'm not ready for adult relationship responsibilities. I love Ava, and I want our relationship to work, but I don't want to give up all my friendships to make her feel secure. I think there should be room in a healthy relationship for both romantic love and platonic friendships. Right now, it feels like Ava wants to be the only important person in my life, and that level of dependence doesn't feel sustainable or healthy for either of us. That story ends there. Love isn't supposed to shrink your world, it's supposed to expand it. Someone who needs to be your only source of social connection isn't looking for a partner, they're looking for a captive audience. The fact that she doesn't have her own friendships makes her behaviour even more concerning because she's trying to make him as isolated as she is. Let's dive into our next story about someone whose girlfriend apparently thinks celebrations are a one-way street. My girlfriend Ruby never celebrates my birthday, but she expects me to go all out for hers. Ruby and I have been together for about a year and a half now, and we've been through 3 of her birthdays and 2 of mine during our relationship. The difference in how we approach each other's birthdays is so stark that I'm starting to feel like I'm in a completely one-sided relationship when it comes to celebrating special occasions. Ruby's birthday is in March and she starts talking about it in January. She'll drop hints about things she wants, share Pinterest boards of party ideas, and basically make it clear that her birthday is a major event that requires weeks of planning and preparation. For her first birthday while we were dating, she planned her own party, but expected me to help with all the logistics and pay for most of the expenses. I ended up spending over $400 on her birthday, between the gift, the party supplies, and my contribution to the restaurant bill for her dinner with friends. I also spent probably 10 hours helping her set up decorations, coordinating with guests, and making sure everything went perfectly. She had this elaborate vision of how her birthday should look, and she expected me to help make that vision happen. For her most recent birthday this past March, Ruby outdid herself with expectations. She wanted a surprise but party. She also wanted to control every detail of how it was planned. She gave me a list of exactly which friends to invite, which restaurant to book, what kind of cake to order, and even what she wanted me to wear to the party. It was like planning a wedding for someone who wanted to be surprised by their own event. I spent weeks coordinating with her friends, booking venues and arranging all the details she'd specified. The total cost ended up being close to $600, and I spent probably 20 hours on planning and preparation. Ruby loved every minute of her surprise party and kept telling everyone how thoughtful and romantic I was for putting it all together. But when my birthday comes around, it's like Ruby completely forgets that birthdays are supposed to be reciprocal celebrations. For my first birthday while we were dating, she got me a card and a gift card to a restaurant. Not a bad gift, but definitely not the same level of effort and expense I'd put into her celebration. She didn't plan anything special, didn't invite my friends, didn't even make dinner reservations. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, so I thanked her for the gift card, and we ended up just having a quiet dinner at the restaurant she'd chosen. It was nice enough, but it felt anticlimactic after all the elaborate planning I'd done for her birthday just a few months earlier. I kept waiting for her to reveal that she'd planned some surprise or special activity, but that was it. This past October was my second birthday during our relationship, and I was hoping Ruby would put more effort into celebrating after seeing how much I'd done for her birthdays. Instead, she seemed to completely forget my birthday was coming until the day before. She asked what I wanted to do, like it was just another random Saturday instead of a day that was supposed to be special. I ended up planning my own birthday dinner and inviting my own friends because Ruby didn't seem to have any ideas or initiatives. She showed up to the dinner I'd organised and gave me a book she'd clearly picked up at the bookstore on her way over. The whole thing felt like I was celebrating by myself, while she was just along for the ride. What really bothers me is that Ruby doesn't seem to see the disparity in how we approach each other's birthdays. When I've brought it up, she says she's not good at planning parties and that I'm naturally better at organising events. She makes it sound like I should be grateful to be the planner in our relationship, instead of expecting her to put in the same effort I do. She also says that her birthday is more important to her than mine is to me, which isn't true at all. I love celebrating my birthday, and I love having people make a fuss over me once a year. Just because I'm not as vocal about my expectations doesn't mean I don't want to feel special on my birthday too. I've started to notice this same pattern with other celebrations and milestones. When we hit our 6-month anniversary, Ruby expected me to remember and plan something special. When we hit our 1-year anniversary, She had a whole list of romantic ideas for how we should celebrate, but she's never once initiated plans for celebrating relationship milestones or other special occasions in my life. Last month, I got a promotion at work that I'd been working toward for over a year. I was really excited about it and mentioned it to Ruby as soon as I found out. She said, "Congratulations," and then immediately started talking about something else. She didn't suggest celebrating or acknowledge that it was a big achievement for me. If she'd gotten a promotion like that, I would have planned a celebration dinner and made a big deal about how proud I was of her. It's not that I need constant praise or elaborate celebrations for every small achievement, but I do want to feel like my girlfriend cares enough about my happiness to occasionally plan something special for me. Right now, it feels like I'm the event coordinator in our relationship, while she's just the guest of honor. When I've tried to explain this to Ruby, she gets defensive and says she shows her love in other ways. She points out that she's affectionate and supportive in daily life, which is true. But I don't think being a good everyday partner excuses never putting effort into celebrating special occasions, especially when she expects so much effort for her own celebrations. The most frustrating part is that Ruby clearly knows how to plan celebrations and make people feel special because she plans elaborate events for her friends' birthdays and other occasions. She just doesn't seem to think I deserve that same level of effort and creativity. It's like she saves her party planning energy for everyone except me. I'm starting to feel like Ruby sees me as someone who's supposed to serve her, rather than as an equal partner who deserves to be celebrated too. The fact that she can accept elaborate birthday celebrations from me without feeling any obligation to reciprocate shows a level of selfishness that I'm not sure I can live with long term. I love Ruby and I want to make her happy, but I also want to feel valued and celebrated in return. Right now, our relationship feels like I'm constantly giving while she's constantly receiving, and that imbalance is making me resentful about occasions that should bring us closer together. That story ends there. She's basically trained him to be her personal party planner while offering him the relationship equivalent of thoughts and prayers for his own celebrations. The fact that she puts effort into other people's birthdays proves she knows exactly how to make someone feel special. She just doesn't think he's worth the effort. Some people really will take and take until there's nothing left to give. Moving to our next story, about someone whose boyfriend, apparently, thinks comparison shopping extends to girlfriends. My boyfriend Jack compares me to his ex. He says she did things better. Jack and I have been together for about 5 months now, and I thought things were going really well between us until I started noticing how often he brings up his ex-girlfriend Sandra in conversation. At first it seemed harmless, just natural references to someone who was a big part of his life for 2 years. But lately, I've realised that almost every time he mentions Sandra, it's to point out something she did better than me. It started with small things that seemed like innocent observations. Jack would mention that Sandra was really good at cooking Italian food, or that she had great taste in music. I didn't think much of it because people naturally reference their past experiences when they're getting to know someone new, but then the comparisons became more direct and more frequent. Last month, Jack and I were planning a weekend trip, and I suggested a few different destinations I thought would be fun. Instead of discussing my suggestions, Jack immediately said that Sandra had planned the most amazing weekend getaway to this cabin in the mountains, and he described in detail how thoughtful and creative her planning had been. He made it clear that my ideas didn't measure up to her level of romantic planning. When I cook dinner for Jack, he'll often mention specific dishes that Sandra used to make and how much he loved them. He doesn't usually criticize my cooking directly, but he'll say things like, "Sandra made this incredible pasta sauce from scratch," or "Sandra always knew exactly how to season chicken perfectly." It's like he's keeping a running scorecard of how I measure up to her culinary skills. The physical comparisons are the worst part. Jack has made comments about Sandra's hair, her style, and even her body in ways that make me feel like I'm constantly being measured against her. He'll see something that reminds him of how she used to dress or do her makeup, and he'll mention it like it's just a casual observation. but it makes me feel like he's cataloguing all the ways I'm different from and inferior to her. Last week we were getting ready to go out to dinner, and I spent extra time on my makeup because I wanted to look nice for our date. When Jack saw me, instead of complimenting how I looked, he said, "Sandra never wore much makeup. She had this natural beauty thing going on." It felt like a criticism disguised as an observation about his ex. I've started paying attention to the tone Jack uses when he talks about Sandra versus how he talks about me. When he mentions things she did, his voice gets warmer and more nostalgic. When he's describing my attempts at the same activities, he sounds more neutral or even slightly disappointed. It's like he's comparing everything I do to this idealized version of his previous relationship. When I finally brought this up with Jack, he seemed genuinely surprised that I was bothered by his comments. He said he wasn't trying to make me feel bad. He was just sharing memories from his past. He said it was natural to reference previous experiences and that I was being too sensitive about harmless observations. But they don't feel harmless when they happen constantly and always seem to highlight areas where I fall short of Sandra's example. It's not like Jack is sharing random memories, he's specifically bringing up things Sandra did well, in contexts where I'm trying to do the same things. It feels intentional, even if he claims it's not. Jack also said that talking about past relationships is healthy, and that trying to pretend Sandra never existed would be weird and immature. He made it sound like I was asking him to erase his romantic history, instead of just asking him to stop using his ex as a measuring stick for our relationship. The thing that really bothers me is that Jack never seems to notice or comment on things I do better than Sandra, or ways that our relationship is an improvement over his previous one. All the comparisons flow in one direction, always highlighting her strengths and my relative weaknesses. If he's going to reference his past relationship constantly, couldn't he occasionally mention ways that I'm better or different in positive ways? I've started to feel like I'm in competition with a ghost. Sandra isn't here to defend herself or show her flaws, so she exists in Jack's memory as this perfect ex-girlfriend who apparently excelled at everything I struggle with. I can never measure up to an idealized memory of someone who doesn't have to deal with the daily realities of being in a relationship with Jack. The constant comparisons are affecting my confidence and making me second-guess everything I do. When I'm cooking, I wonder if Sandra would have made something better. When we're planning activities, I think about whether my ideas are creative enough compared to hers. I shouldn't have to compete with someone who isn't even in our relationship anymore. I've tried asking Jack to be more mindful about how often he brings up Sandra, especially in contexts where it feels like he's comparing us. But he says he shouldn't have to censor his thoughts and memories just because they make me insecure. He's turned this into me having a problem with his honesty instead of him having a problem with his lack of sensitivity. I don't want Jack to pretend Sandra never existed, but I also don't want to feel like I'm constantly failing to live up to her example. I want to be appreciated for who I am and what I bring to our relationship, not constantly measured against someone else's memory of what a good girlfriend should be. Right now, I feel like Jack is dating me, but wishing I was more like Sandra. That's not fair to either of us, and it's not a foundation for building something real together. That story is finished. Dating someone who treats you like a discount version of their ex is emotional torture. He's basically using her as a reference point to show her all the ways she's disappointing him. If Sandra was so perfect, he should have stayed with Sandra instead of making someone else feel inadequate every single day. Let's move to our next story about someone whose husband's work schedule is raising some serious questions. My husband Oliver works late every night. He claims it's for work, but I'm starting to doubt. Oliver and I have been married for 4 years, and up until about 8 months ago, he had a pretty normal work schedule. He's a sales manager at a mid-sized tech company, and he usually got home around 6 in the evening. We'd have dinner together, spend time talking about our days, and generally had a good work-life balance. But since last spring, Oliver has been staying at the office later and later, and his explanations for the overtime don't always add up. It started gradually with Oliver saying he needed to stay late once or twice a week to finish projects or prepare for important meetings. I was supportive because I know his job can be demanding, and occasional overtime seemed reasonable for someone in his position. But over the past few months, he's been working late almost every single night, sometimes not getting home until 10 or 11 o'clock. When I ask Oliver about why he's suddenly working so much more than he used to, he gives vague answers about increased responsibilities and important client deadlines. He says the company is going through a busy period and that everyone in his department is putting in extra hours. But when I've run into his co-workers at social events, they seem to be keeping normal schedules and don't mention anything about unusually heavy workloads. Last month I decided to surprise Oliver by bringing him dinner at his office, thinking it would be a nice gesture since he was working so late. When I got to his building around 8 in the evening, the parking lot was mostly empty and the lights were off in most of the offices. When I called Oliver to tell him I was downstairs, he sounded flustered and said he was in the middle of an important call and couldn't come down right then. He eventually came down about 15 minutes later, but he seemed nervous and kept looking back toward the building. When I asked if I could come up and see his office, he said it was too messy and that he preferred to keep work and home life separate. He took the dinner I'd brought but seemed eager for me to leave rather than grateful for the surprise. I've also noticed that Oliver's phone behaviour has changed significantly. He used to leave his phone sitting around casually and would answer calls or texts in front of me without any secrecy. Now he takes his phone with him everywhere, even to the bathroom, and he'll step outside or go to another room when he gets calls. He says they're work calls and that he doesn't want to bore me with business conversations. When Oliver does get home late from work, he doesn't seem tired or stressed like someone who's been putting in 12-hour days. He seems energized, sometimes even cheerful, like he's had a good evening rather than a grueling work session. When I mention this, he says he's learned to manage work stress better and that staying busy at the office actually helps him feel more accomplished. The financial side doesn't make sense either. Oliver says he's working all this overtime because he's trying to earn more money for our future, but there hasn't been any noticeable increase in his paycheck. When I've asked about overtime pay or bonuses for all the extra work, he says his salary is fixed and that he's investing in his career advancement rather than immediate financial gain. I've started paying attention to little details that don't add up. Oliver's car doesn't have more mileage than it should if he's really just going to work and back. His clothes don't smell like office air conditioning and printer toner the way they used to when he worked normal hours. Sometimes he comes home smelling like perfume or with traces of makeup that I don't wear. When I ask about these things, he always has an explanation, but they don't feel convincing anymore. Last weekend I decided to drive by Oliver's office building on Saturday evening when he said he had to go in for a few hours to catch up on work. The parking lot was completely empty, and when I called his cell phone, it went straight to voicemail. He didn't return my call for over 2 hours, and when he finally did, he said his phone had died while he was working. I'm starting to feel like I'm living with a stranger who's leading some kind of double life. Either Oliver is having an affair, or he's involved in something else he doesn't want me to know about. The constant lies about his whereabouts are destroying my trust, and I don't know how to confront him without concrete evidence of what he's really doing during all those supposed work nights. That story ends there. The empty parking lot discovery is like catching someone in the most obvious lie possible. If you're going to fake working late, at least make sure your office building looks occupied. This man is definitely not staying late for quarterly reports and performance reviews. The perfume traces and mysterious energy levels when he gets home are painting a pretty clear picture of what those evening hours actually involve. Moving on to someone whose fiancé apparently thinks weddings are just elaborate bankruptcy parties. My fiancée Sarah wants a lavish wedding we can't afford. She refuses to compromise on the budget. Sarah and I got engaged 6 months ago, and I thought planning our wedding would be one of the most exciting experiences we'd share together. Instead, it's turned into a constant source of stress and arguments because Sarah has this vision of an elaborate celebration that costs about 3 times what we can realistically afford. When we first started talking about wedding planning, I suggested we sit down and create a realistic budget based on our savings and what our families might contribute. Sarah agreed that budgeting was important, but when we actually calculated what we could spend, she seemed shocked that the number wasn't higher. She'd been planning this dream wedding in her head for years, and the reality of our financial situation didn't match her expectations. Our combined savings for the wedding is about $15,000, and both sets of parents have offered to contribute another $10,000 total. So we're looking at a $25,000 budget, which I thought was pretty generous for a wedding. But Sarah has her heart set on a venue that costs $12,000 just for the reception space, not including food, flowers, photography, or any of the other expenses that add up quickly. When I showed Sarah more affordable venue options, she got upset and said I was trying to cheap out on the most important day of our lives. She'd already fallen in love with this expensive venue after seeing it on Instagram, and she couldn't understand why we couldn't just find a way to make it work financially. She suggested we could put some of the costs on credit cards and pay them off after the wedding. The idea of going into debt for one day, no matter how special, makes me really uncomfortable. We're already dealing with student loans and trying to save for a house down payment. Adding wedding debt to our existing financial obligations would set us back years in terms of our other goals. But when I try to explain this to Sarah, she says I'm being unromantic and practical about something that should be magical. Sarah has also been influenced by wedding content on social media and Pinterest boards that showcase these incredibly elaborate celebrations. She'll show me photos of weddings that probably cost $60,000 or $70,000 and ask why we can't do something similar. When I point out that those couples probably had much higher budgets than us, she says we should be willing to invest in our future together. The guest list is another major source of conflict. Sarah wants to invite over 200 people, including distant relatives, old college friends, and co-workers she barely talks to. She says a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to celebrate with everyone who's been part of your life. But feeding 200 people at the venue she wants would cost nearly $20,000 just for catering. I've suggested we could have a smaller, more intimate celebration with our closest family and friends, maybe 60 or 70 people total. That would allow us to have a really nice party within our budget and still create beautiful memories. But Sarah says a small wedding would feel disappointing, and that she's been dreaming of a big celebration since she was a little girl. She's also insisting on expensive extras that seem unnecessary to me. She wants a live band instead of a DJ, professional videography in addition to photography, elaborate floral arrangements for every table, and designer wedding favors for all the guests. Each of these additions costs thousands of dollars, but Sarah says they're essential for creating the atmosphere she envisions. When I've tried to suggest alternatives or compromises, Sarah accuses me of not caring about our wedding or not understanding how important this day is to her. She says if I really loved her, I'd want to give her the wedding of her dreams, regardless of the cost. She's made it seem like my concerns about money are actually concerns about our relationship. I've started to feel like Sarah cares more about having an Instagram-worthy wedding than about starting our marriage on solid financial ground. She talks about the wedding like it's a performance for other people, rather than a celebration of our commitment to each other. The focus has shifted from the meaning of getting married to the spectacle of the event itself. Last week, Sarah suggested we could ask our parents to contribute more money or take out a personal loan to cover the difference between our budget and her dream wedding costs. She said other couples do it all the time and that we could pay it back gradually over the next few years. But I don't want to start our marriage in debt or put financial pressure on our families. The wedding planning has started to affect our entire relationship. Every conversation about the future somehow turns into an argument about the wedding budget. Sarah seems resentful that I won't just agree to spend whatever it takes to make her happy, and I'm frustrated that she won't consider compromising on a celebration we simply can't afford. I love Sarah and I want to marry her, but I'm worried that if we can't agree on something as fundamental as financial responsibility, we might have bigger problems ahead of us. The way she's handling the wedding budget makes me question how we'll handle other major financial decisions as a married couple. Right now, it feels like I have to choose between giving Sarah the wedding she wants and maintaining the financial stability I think we need for our future together. Either choice is going to leave one of us feeling disappointed and resentful. That story concludes there. Starting a marriage with crushing debt because your partner values Instagram aesthetics over financial stability is relationship suicide in expensive clothing. She's treating their wedding like a luxury purchase instead of the beginning of a shared life together. If she can't compromise on one day, imagine how she'll handle 30 years of financial decisions. Let's move to our next story about someone whose girlfriend apparently thinks privacy is just a suggestion. My girlfriend Grace reads my journal without permission. She says she just wanted to understand me better. I've been keeping a journal for about 5 years now, ever since my therapist suggested it as a way to process my thoughts and emotions. It's become this really important part of my daily routine, and writing in it helps me work through stress, relationship issues, and personal growth in a way that feels private and safe. My girlfriend Grace and I have been together for 8 months, and I thought she respected my need for personal space and privacy until I discovered she's been reading my journal behind my back. I keep my journal in a drawer next to my bed, and I've never tried to hide it from Grace or acted secretive about the fact that I write in it regularly. She knows it's important to me and that it's something I do for my mental health. I just never thought I needed to explicitly tell her not to read it because I assumed that kind of privacy was obvious and respected in a healthy relationship. Last week I was writing in my journal before bed, and I mentioned something about feeling frustrated with Grace's tendency to interrupt me when I'm trying to tell stories. It wasn't anything mean or relationship ending, just a small annoyance that I was working through on paper. The next day, Grace brought up that exact issue and asked why I felt like she interrupted me too much. I was confused about why she was suddenly aware of something I'd never mentioned to her directly. When I asked how she knew I felt that way, Grace got defensive and eventually admitted that she'd been reading my journal occasionally to better understand my thoughts and feelings. She said she did it because she cares about me and wants to be a better girlfriend, and that she thought reading my private thoughts would help her understand me on a deeper level. I was completely shocked and felt like such a fundamental boundary had been violated. I explained to Grace that my journal is private and that reading it without permission is a serious invasion of my privacy. She seemed surprised by how upset I was and said she didn't think it was a big deal since we're in a committed relationship and shouldn't have secrets from each other. But there's a huge difference between not having secrets and having every private thought accessible to your partner. My journal is where I process emotions, work through problems, and sometimes vent about things that are bothering me. It's not meant to be read by anyone else, and knowing that Grace has been accessing those thoughts without permission makes me feel exposed and violated. I asked Grace how long she had been reading my journal, and she admitted it had been going on for about 2 months. She said she started after we had an argument and wanted to understand my perspective better. She claimed she was trying to be a more supportive girlfriend by learning about issues I might be struggling with privately. When I pressed her for more details about what she'd read, I realised Grace had been accessing some really personal entries about my family relationships, my insecurities, and even my thoughts about our relationship. She knew things about my past and my fears that I'd never chosen to share with her directly, and she'd been using that information to guide her behaviour toward me. The most disturbing part was that Grace had been responding to things I'd written in my journal without ever acknowledging that she'd read them. She'd bring up topics I'd been thinking about privately, or she'd be extra supportive about issues I'd been struggling with internally. It felt like she'd been manipulating our conversations based on information she'd stolen from my private thoughts. When I asked Grace to promise she would never read my journal again, she said she would try, but that she didn't understand why I was so upset about her wanting to understand me better. She said couples in serious relationships should be open with each other, and that my desire for privacy made her feel like I was hiding things from her. I tried to explain that privacy and secrecy are different things. I'm not hiding anything from Grace that affects our relationship or that she needs to know. I'm just processing my thoughts and emotions in a space that should be private and safe. Everyone deserves to have some internal life that isn't accessible to their partner. Grace said she felt hurt that I didn't want to share my deepest thoughts with her, and that my journal felt like a barrier between us. She made it sound like my need for privacy was actually a rejection of intimacy rather than a healthy boundary that adults should respect in relationships. Since discovering that Grace had been reading my journal, I've stopped writing in it regularly because I don't feel safe putting my thoughts on paper anymore. The violation of privacy has made me self-censor even in my own journal, which defeats the entire purpose of having that outlet for processing emotions and experiences. I've also started to question what other boundaries Grace might be crossing without my knowledge. If she thinks reading my journal is acceptable, what else might she be doing to monitor or access my private life? The trust between us has been damaged in a way that's going to be really hard to rebuild. Grace keeps asking when I'm going to forgive her and move past this incident. She says she's learned her lesson and won't read my journal anymore, but she doesn't seem to understand why the violation feels so significant to me. She's treating it like a minor mistake, rather than a serious breach of trust and privacy. I love Grace and I want our relationship to work, but I need to feel like I can have private thoughts and spaces that she respects. Right now, I don't feel safe being completely vulnerable with her, because I know she's willing to cross boundaries, to access information I haven't chosen to share. That story is finished. Reading someone's journal is like breaking into their mind without permission, and then getting mad that they're upset about the burglary. She violated his most private space for months, and somehow convinced herself it was an act of love. The fact that she used his private thoughts to manipulate conversations makes this even more disturbing than simple snooping. Moving to someone whose partner apparently thinks family introductions are optional. My partner Henry never introduced me to his parents. We've been together for 2 years. Henry and I have been in a committed relationship for 2 years now, and in many ways it feels like we're building a real life together. We live together, we've talked about marriage and kids, and we've integrated our daily lives in ways that feel permanent and meaningful. But there's this one huge piece missing that's starting to make me question how serious Henry actually is about our future together. I've never met Henry's parents, and he's shown no interest in arranging an introduction despite multiple conversations about how important this is to me. It's not like they live across the country or we haven't had opportunities. His parents live about an hour away, and Henry visits them regularly, usually once or twice a month. He just goes alone and never suggests that I come with him. In the first year of our relationship, I didn't push the parent introduction issue because I figured Henry would bring it up when he felt ready. Some people take longer to integrate their romantic relationships with their family relationships, and I didn't want to pressure him into something that felt premature. But now, we're talking about getting engaged, and I still haven't even had a phone conversation with the people who raised the man I want to marry. When I've brought up wanting to meet his parents, Henry gives vague responses about timing and logistics. He says they're very busy people and that coordinating schedules is complicated. He says he wants the first meeting to be perfect and special, so he's waiting for the right opportunity. But 2 years is a really long time to wait for the right opportunity, especially when his parents live so close by. I've started to suspect that Henry's parents don't know I exist, or at least don't know how serious our relationship is. When Henry talks about his visits home, he never mentions discussing me or our relationship with them. He doesn't share stories about things his parents have said about me, or questions they've asked about our future together. It's like I'm completely absent from his family conversations. Last month, I decided to test this theory by suggesting that Henry could mention to his parents that he's in a serious relationship and see how they react. I thought maybe they weren't aware that he had a girlfriend who was interested in meeting them. But Henry got uncomfortable and said he didn't want to make a big announcement about our relationship because it might create pressure for immediate introductions. The secrecy is starting to make me feel like Henry's ashamed of me or uncertain about our future together. If someone is planning to spend their life with you, wouldn't they want their family to know you and love you too? The fact that Henry can compartmentalize our relationship so completely from his family relationships makes me wonder if he sees us as temporary rather than permanent. I've met Henry's friends, his co-workers, and even some extended family members at parties and events. It's specifically his parents who remain off limits, which makes the situation feel even more intentional and hurtful. It's not like Henry is a private person who doesn't introduce me to anyone in his life. He just draws this hard line around his parents that I'm not allowed to cross. When I've asked Henry directly why he doesn't want me to meet his parents, he says it's complicated and that his family dynamics are difficult to navigate. He hints that his parents have strong opinions about his relationships and that he's protecting me from potential drama or criticism, but I'd rather meet them and deal with whatever issues arise than continue to be completely excluded from that part of his life. Henry also says that his parents' approval doesn't matter to him and that our relationship doesn't need their validation to be real and meaningful. While I appreciate that sentiment, I think it's important for partners to at least try to integrate their families, especially when you're planning a future together. How can we get married if I've never even met the people who will be my in-laws? I've started to feel like I'm Henry's secret girlfriend rather than his serious partner. When he goes home for holidays or family events, I spend them alone while he celebrates with people who don't know I exist. When his parents call him, he takes the calls in another room, so I can't even hear casual references to me in their conversations. The situation came to a head last week when Henry mentioned that his parents had asked him when he was going to settle down and find someone to marry. Instead of telling them about me, he apparently just said he was still figuring out what he wanted in life. I was hurt that he'd missed such a perfect opportunity to at least mention that he's in a serious relationship. When I pointed out that he could have used that conversation to introduce the idea of me, Henry said he didn't want to get his parents' hopes up about marriage until he was completely certain about our future. But how can he be certain about our future if he won't even let me meet the people who are most important to him? I'm starting to feel like Henry is keeping me separate from his family because he's not sure I'm the person he wants to marry. Maybe meeting the parents feels too permanent and official for someone who's still on the fence about our relationship. But I need to know that the person I'm building a life with is proud enough of our relationship to share it with his family. Right now, I feel like I'm in a relationship that only exists in isolation from Henry's family life. That doesn't feel sustainable or healthy for building the kind of future we've been talking about together. That story ends there. 2 years is way past the expiration date for family introductions, especially when you're talking about marriage. He's either deeply ashamed of his relationship or keeping his options open by maintaining complete family separation. Either way, being someone's secret for that long isn't a relationship, it's a situationship with delusions of grandeur. Let's dive into our next story about someone whose wife apparently thinks public humiliation is comedy gold. My wife Laura mocked my accent in front of her friends. Everyone laughed while I sat there embarrassed. I moved to the United States from Ireland when I was in my early 20s, and I've been here for about 8 years now. My accent has softened considerably since I arrived, but it's still noticeable, especially when I'm excited or telling a story. I've always been a little self-conscious about it because some people have trouble understanding me, and I've worked hard to make sure I speak clearly in professional settings. My more clearly in wife Laura and I have been married for 3 said she loves years, and she's always my accent and finds it charming. When we first started dating, she would ask me to say certain words just because she thought they sounded beautiful with my accent. I felt comfortable and confident speaking naturally around her because she made me feel like my way of speaking was something to be celebrated rather than hidden. Last weekend we went to a dinner party at Laura's friend's house with about 8 other couples. I was telling a story about something that happened at my work, and I was getting animated and enthusiastic the way I do when I'm comfortable with a group of people. My accent was probably more pronounced than usual because I was relaxed and having fun with the storytelling. In the middle of my story, Laura interrupted me and started imitating my accent in this exaggerated, mocking way. She repeated something I'd just said, but with this over-the-top Irish accent that sounded like a caricature from a bad movie. Everyone at the table started laughing, and Laura kept going, doing this fake accent and making jokes about Irish stereotypes. I sat there feeling completely humiliated, while the entire dinner party laughed at Laura's impression of how I speak. She was making me sound like a cartoon character rather than a real person, and she was clearly enjoying the attention and laughter she was getting from mocking me. I tried to smile and play along, but I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. After a few minutes of this performance, Laura said something like, "Isn't he adorable when he gets all worked up and Irish?" She was talking about me like I was a pet or a novelty rather than her husband. The other guests were still chuckling, and I could feel my face burning with embarrassment. I stopped telling my story and basically stayed quiet for the rest of the evening. When we got home that night, I told Laura how hurt and embarrassed I felt about her mocking my accent in front of her friends. I explained that making fun of how I speak, especially in public, made me feel like she was ashamed of me or saw me as entertainment for other people rather than as an equal partner. Laura's response was that she was just being playful and that everyone thought it was funny and harmless. She said I was being too sensitive and that she wasn't making fun of me. She was just sharing something she found endearing about me with her friends. She made it sound like I was overreacting to what she considered loving teasing. But there's a big difference between private, affectionate teasing and public mockery that turns your partner into a punchline for other people's entertainment. The way Laura imitated my accent wasn't loving or gentle. It was exaggerated and designed to get laughs at my expense. She was performing for her friends, using my insecurities as material. I tried to explain to Laura that my accent is something I've always been self-conscious about, and that having her mock it publicly felt like a betrayal of the trust I'd placed in her. I told her that I'd felt safe being myself around her, but now I was worried that she secretly found my way of speaking amusing or embarrassing. Laura said I was being dramatic and that if I was really secure about my accent, her impression wouldn't have bothered me so much. She turned the whole situation around to make it seem like I had an insecurity problem, rather than acknowledging that her behaviour was hurtful and inappropriate. She said couples tease each other all the time, and that I needed to develop a thicker skin. The incident has affected how I feel about speaking naturally around Laura and her friends. I find myself monitoring my accent more carefully and choosing my words more cautiously when we're in social situations. The spontaneous storytelling and animated conversations that Laura used to say she loved have become sources of anxiety because I'm worried about giving her more material to mock. I've also started to notice that Laura makes other comments about my Irish background that feel dismissive or stereotypical. She'll make jokes about my drinking, my temper, or my family's Catholic background in ways that reduce my entire cultural identity to cliches. When I've pointed this out, she says I'm being overly sensitive about harmless observations. The worst part is that Laura seems to think her public mockery was a form of affection, like she was showing off something cute about her husband to her friends. But it didn't feel affectionate to me. It felt humiliating. There's a difference between sharing something you love about your partner and turning them into entertainment for other people. I've asked Laura to be more mindful about how she talks about my accent and cultural background, especially in public settings. But she says I'm trying to control her sense of humour and that she shouldn't have to censor herself to protect my feelings. She's made it clear that she thinks I'm the problem for being hurt by her behaviour. Now I feel like I can't be completely myself around Laura's friends because I'm worried about becoming the subject of her next comedic performance. The trust and comfort I used to feel, speaking naturally around her, has been damaged, and I don't know how to get it back when she doesn't see anything wrong with what she did. That story concludes there. Using your partner's insecurities as entertainment for your friends is relationship cruelty disguised as humour. She turned something he was vulnerable about into a party trick, and then gaslit him for being hurt about it. The fact that she thinks cultural mockery is just playful teasing shows a complete lack of respect for his identity and feelings. Moving to someone whose girlfriend apparently treats commitments like rough suggestions, my girlfriend Sophia cancels plans last minute. It feels like I'm never a priority. Sophia and I have been dating for about 10 months now, and while I really care about her and enjoy the time we spend together, I'm getting increasingly frustrated with her habit of cancelling our plans at the last minute. It's happened so many times that I've started to feel like I can't rely on her to follow through on anything we schedule together. The pattern usually goes like this. We'll make plans during the week for something on the weekend. I'll look forward to it and organise my schedule around it. And then a few hours before we're supposed to meet, Sophia will text me saying something came up. And she can't make it. She always apologises and suggests we reschedule, but the rescheduling rarely actually happens. Last month we had planned to go to a concert that I'd bought tickets for weeks in advance. I was really excited about it because it was a band we both loved, and I thought it would be a fun date night. The afternoon of the concert, Sophia texted me saying her co-worker had invited her to a last-minute birthday party, and she felt obligated to go since they were close friends. I was disappointed, but tried to be understanding about her work relationships being important. I ended up going to the concert alone, which was awkward and not nearly as fun as it would have been with her. When I brought up how hurt I felt about her cancelling, Sophia said she was sorry, but that the birthday party was a once-in-a-lifetime event, while we could see concerts anytime. But that's exactly the problem. Sophia treats our plans like they're flexible and replaceable, while treating other people's invitations like they're mandatory and urgent. She'll cancel dinner plans with me to go to happy hour with co-workers or skip a movie we'd planned to watch because her friend wants to go shopping. It's like I'm always the backup option that gets dropped when something better comes along. I've started to notice that Sophia's cancellations follow a pattern. She's much more likely to bail on our plans if we're doing something low-key like staying in for dinner or going for a walk. But she also cancels plans that require more effort or commitment, like day trips or events that involve advanced planning. It's like she wants to keep her schedule as open and spontaneous as possible. The last-minute nature of her cancellations is what really bothers me. If Sophia knew in advance that she might not be able to keep our plans, I could understand that, and we could work around it. But getting a text an hour before we're supposed to meet saying she can't make it feels disrespectful of my time and energy. I've often already gotten ready, travelled part way to meet her, or turned down other invitations to keep our plans. Last weekend was the breaking point. We had planned to spend Saturday together doing a hiking trail about an hour outside the city. I woke up early, packed snacks and water, and was getting in my car when Sophia texted saying her sister wanted to go furniture shopping and needed her opinion on some purchases. She asked if we could do the hike another weekend instead. I was so frustrated that I called her instead of texting back. I explained that I'd been looking forward to our hike all week, that I'd already invested time and energy into preparing for it, and that constantly cancelling plans was making me feel like I wasn't important to her. Sophia got defensive and said I was being unreasonable about her wanting to help her family. But it's not about any individual cancellation or the reasons behind them. It's about the pattern of behaviour that shows Sophia doesn't prioritise our relationship or respect the commitments she makes to me. Everyone has emergencies and unexpected obligations, but when cancelling becomes the norm rather than the exception, it stops being about emergencies and starts being about priorities. I've tried talking to Sophia about this pattern multiple times, and she always acknowledges that she needs to be better about keeping plans. She'll apologise and promise to be more reliable going forward, but then the same thing happens again the following week. It's like she genuinely doesn't understand how her constant cancellations affect me and our relationship. Sophia also seems to think that apologizing and rescheduling should make everything okay, but we rarely actually follow through on the rescheduling part. She'll say we can do something next weekend instead, but then next weekend arrives, and either she makes other plans or something else comes up that takes priority over our rescheduled date. I've started to feel like I can't make any plans that depend on Sophia being reliable because there's a 50% chance she'll cancel at the last minute. I've stopped inviting her to events that require advanced planning or ticket purchases because I don't want to waste money or deal with the disappointment when she inevitably bails. The constant uncertainty about whether our plans will actually happen is exhausting and stressful. I find myself not getting excited about things we've scheduled because I've learned not to count on them actually occurring. That's not a healthy way to approach a relationship where you should be able to look forward to spending time together. What really bothers me is that Sophia doesn't seem to understand that her reliability affects how secure I feel in our relationship overall. When someone consistently cancels plans with you, it sends a message that you're not a priority in their life. It makes me question whether she's really invested in building something meaningful together, or if she's just keeping me around as a convenient option when nothing better is available. I love spending time with Sophia when we're actually together, but I'm getting tired of feeling like I'm always competing with whatever spontaneous opportunity might arise for her attention. I need to be with someone who values our time together enough to protect it and prioritize it, not someone who treats our plans like tentative suggestions that can be abandoned whenever something more appealing comes along. That story is over. Being someone's plan B for 10 months straight would drive anyone insane. She's basically training him to expect disappointment while treating every other person's invitation like a royal summons. At this point, he should start making backup plans for his backup plans. Or better yet, find someone who actually wants to spend time with him. Let's move to someone whose boyfriend just dropped a relationship bomb about kids. My boyfriend Adam doesn't want kids, I do. We never discussed it until now, and it feels like a deal breaker. Adam and I have been together for about 15 months, and up until last week I thought we were on the same page about most of the big life decisions that couples need to agree on. We've talked about moving in together, we've discussed marriage in general terms, and we've shared our thoughts about career goals and financial planning. But somehow, we managed to avoid having a serious conversation about children until it came up accidentally during dinner last Tuesday. We were at a restaurant, and the table next to us had a family with 2 young kids who were being pretty loud and disruptive during their meal. I made some comment about how cute the little girl was despite her energetic behaviour, and Adam responded by saying he was grateful we'd never have to deal with that kind of chaos. I laughed and said something like, "Wait until we have kids of our own," assuming he was just joking about the restaurant situation. That's when Adam looked at me with this confused expression and said he thought I knew he didn't want children. He said he'd assumed we were on the same page about being child-free because we'd never seriously discussed having kids in the year plus we'd been together. I was completely shocked because I'd always assumed that most people want kids eventually, and Adam had never given me any indication that he felt differently. When I told Adam that I definitely want children someday, probably in the next few years, he seemed just as surprised as I was. He said he'd never wanted kids and couldn't imagine changing his mind about something so fundamental. He talked about valuing his freedom, his financial independence, and his ability to travel and pursue hobbies without the responsibility of caring for children. I tried to understand his perspective, but I've always known that I want to be a mother. I've imagined having children since I was a teenager, and it's one of the things I'm most looking forward to in my future. The idea of never experiencing pregnancy, raising kids, or watching them grow up feels like missing out on one of life's most meaningful experiences. We spent the rest of that dinner having this intense conversation about our completely incompatible life goals. Adam explained that he sees children as expensive, time-consuming, and limiting to the kind of life he wants to live. He values spontaneity, quiet evenings at home, and the ability to focus on his career and personal interests without having to consider anyone else's needs. I understand his points, but I also think having children brings joy, purpose, and love that outweigh the sacrifices and challenges. I want to experience the unique bond between parent and child, and I want to create a family with someone I love. I've always imagined that sharing those experiences would bring me and my partner closer together. The worst part of this whole situation is that we both feel like the other person should have brought up this topic much earlier in our relationship. Adam thinks I should have mentioned wanting kids when we first started getting serious, and I think he should have mentioned not wanting them. We both assumed the other person shared our perspective on something so important. Now we're faced with this impossible situation where neither of us is willing to compromise on something so fundamental to how we want to live our lives. Adam says he absolutely will not have children under any circumstances, and I know I'll regret it forever if I give up my dream of being a mother for any relationship. We've had several more conversations about this over the past week, and both of us keep hoping the other person will change their mind or find some middle ground. But there really isn't a compromise position on having children. You either have them or you don't, and both choices completely change the trajectory of your life. Adam has suggested that maybe I don't really want kids as much as I think I do, and that I've just been influenced by social expectations about women needing to be mothers. But I've thought about this extensively, and I'm certain that having children is something I want for myself, not something I feel pressured into by other people. I've suggested that maybe Adam's feelings about kids might change as he gets older, or as we get more settled in our relationship. But he's been very clear that this isn't a phase or something he's uncertain about. He's 29 years old and has thought carefully about what he wants from life, and children aren't part of that vision. The really heartbreaking part is that everything else about our relationship works so well. We have great communication. We enjoy spending time together. We share similar values and interests, and we've built this strong emotional connection over the past 15 months. But this one fundamental disagreement feels like it makes all of those good things irrelevant. We're both struggling with the idea of ending a relationship that makes us happy in every other way because of this one incompatibility. But we're also both realistic enough to know that staying together would mean one of us sacrificing something essential to our vision of a fulfilling life. I keep thinking that maybe if we love each other enough, we could find a way to make this work. But the more we talk about it, the more obvious it becomes that we want completely different futures. And loving someone doesn't mean you should give up core parts of your identity or your dreams to be with them. Adam and I are meeting tonight to talk about whether there's any path forward for our relationship, or if we need to accept that we're simply incompatible, despite caring deeply about each other. I'm dreading the conversation because I have a feeling we both already know what the answer is going to be. That story ends there. This is honestly one of the most heartbreaking relationship endings because nobody did anything wrong. They just discovered they're building toward completely different lives and somehow never thought to mention it in 15 months. Sometimes love isn't enough when your fundamental life goals are pointing in opposite directions. And that's probably the hardest lesson relationships can teach us. Moving to someone whose girlfriend thinks flirting is just performance art. My girlfriend Anna flirts with other guys as a joke. She thinks it's harmless, but I feel disrespected. Anna and I have been dating for about 6 months, and overall our relationship has been really good. She's outgoing and social in ways that I admire, and she's helped me become more comfortable in group settings than I ever was before. But Anna has this habit of flirting with other guys when we're out together, and when I've brought up how uncomfortable it makes me, she dismisses my concerns by saying it's all just harmless fun. The flirting usually happens at parties or bars when Anna has had a few drinks and is feeling more social than usual. She'll strike up conversations with random guys, laugh at their jokes in this exaggerated way, touch their arms when she's talking, and basically give them the kind of attention that would definitely be considered flirting if she were single. But Anna insists it doesn't mean anything because she has no intention of actually pursuing these interactions. Last weekend we were at a friend's birthday party, and Anna spent about 30 minutes talking to this guy she'd just met, completely ignoring me and everyone else we knew at the party. She was being playful and giggly, complimenting his shirt, asking him about his job in this really interested way, and generally acting like she was trying to charm him. I stood nearby feeling awkward and jealous while watching my girlfriend flirt with a stranger. When the guy eventually asked for Anna's phone number, she laughed and pointed to me, saying something like, "Sorry, I'm here with my boyfriend." But the fact that she let the conversation get to the point where he felt comfortable asking for her number shows that her flirting was convincing enough to make him think she was actually interested in him. After the party, I told Anna that watching her flirt with other guys makes me feel disrespected and uncomfortable. I explained that while I don't expect her to be unfriendly to other men, the level of charm and attention she gives them feels inappropriate for someone who's in a committed relationship. Anna's response was that I was being possessive and that she should be allowed to be friendly and social without me policing her behaviour. She said the flirting doesn't mean anything because she comes home with me at the end of the night and never actually pursues these interactions beyond casual conversation. She made it sound like I was being insecure and controlling for having a problem with behaviour that she considers completely harmless. She said if I trusted her, I wouldn't be bothered by her talking to other men. But it's not about trust, it's about respect and appropriate boundaries in a relationship. I do trust that Anna isn't going to cheat on me or leave me for someone she meets at a party. But I don't think trust means I have to be okay with watching my girlfriend act single and flirty with other men while I'm standing right there. I've tried to explain to Anna that flirting with other people, even when it's just for fun, sends mixed messages about our relationship and makes me feel like she's not fully committed to being with me. If she needs validation and attention from other men to feel good about herself, what does that say about whether she's satisfied with the attention and affection she gets from me? Anna says I'm overthinking things and that flirting is just part of her personality. She says she's naturally charming and friendly, and that asking her to tone down her interactions with other men would be asking her to change who she is fundamentally. She makes it sound like my discomfort with her flirting is actually a problem with her entire personality, but there's a difference between being friendly and being flirtatious. When Anna talks to women or men she's not attracted to, she's pleasant and social, but not particularly charming or playful. It's specifically with attractive men around our age that she turns on this extra level of charm and attention that feels inappropriate to me. I've also noticed that Anna seems to enjoy flirting with other men to boost her confidence when we're out together. She'll laugh extra loud at their jokes, compliment their appearance, and find excuses to touch their arms or shoulders during conversation. What makes it worse is that she seems to save her most charming personality for these interactions, being more animated and playful with strangers than she often is with me. The most recent incident happened at a work happy hour, where Anna spent the entire evening talking to a guy from another department. She was being so flirty that several of my co-workers asked me later if everything was okay between us. I felt humiliated having my colleagues witness my girlfriend essentially ignoring me to charm someone else, especially in a professional setting where people know we're together. When I brought this up with Anna, she said I was being dramatic and that workplace networking requires being friendly and engaging. She said the guy was just a professional contact and that I was reading romantic interest into normal social interaction. But I saw the way she was looking at him and the way he was responding, and it definitely went beyond professional networking. I've started to dread going out with Anna because I know there's a good chance she'll find some attractive guy to focus her attention on while I stand there feeling invisible. It's affecting my confidence and making me question whether she's really satisfied with our relationship or if she needs constant validation from other men to feel good about herself. Anna keeps insisting that her flirting is harmless because she never follows through on it, but I don't think that's the point. The point is that she's making me feel like I'm not enough for her and that she needs attention from other men even when we're supposed to be spending time together. It feels disrespectful and hurtful, regardless of her intentions. That story ends there. Anna's turning her boyfriend into a prop at his own relationship, while she auditions for other men's attention. The fact that his co-workers noticed something was wrong says everything about how obvious her behaviour really is. Flirting might be just for fun for her, but it's humiliation therapy for him. Moving to our next story about someone whose partner apparently thinks financial transparency is optional in a marriage. My partner James keeps secrets about money. I keep finding new credit card charges. James and I have been married for 2 years, and when we first got together, we agreed to be completely transparent about our finances. We have joint accounts for most things, and we've always discussed major purchases before making them. But over the past 6 months, I've been discovering credit card charges and financial activities that James never mentioned to me. It started when I was reviewing our credit card statements and noticed several charges at restaurants and stores that I didn't recognise. When I asked James about them, he said they were work lunches or small purchases he forgot to mention. I didn't think too much about it because everyone makes impulse purchases sometimes, and the amounts weren't huge. But then I started paying more attention to our statements, and I realised there were consistent charges that James wasn't discussing with me. Online purchases, subscriptions to services I'd never heard of, and frequent transactions at places he claimed he rarely visited. When I added up all these undisclosed expenses, they had totaled several $100s each month. The most concerning discovery was when I found a credit card statement in James's name that I didn't know existed. He had opened a separate credit card account without telling me and had been using it for months. The balance was over $3,000, and the charges included things like expensive electronics, clothes, and entertainment expenses that he'd never mentioned. When I confronted James about the secret credit card, he got defensive and said he opened it to build his credit score independently. He claimed he was planning to tell me about it eventually, but wanted to prove he could manage it responsibly first. He said the purchases were mostly necessities and small treats that didn't require discussion between spouses. But looking at the actual charges, many of them were definitely not necessities. There were expensive gadgets, premium streaming services, and frequent purchases at high-end stores. He'd been maintaining a completely separate financial life that included luxuries we'd never discussed or budgeted for together. I asked James why he felt the need to hide these purchases from me, and he said he didn't want to have to justify every small expense or ask permission for things he wanted. He said married couples should be able to make some independent financial decisions without having to report everything to each other. I tried to explain that it wasn't about asking permission, it was about transparency and making sure we're both aware of our overall financial situation. When one person is secretly spending hundreds of dollars a month without the other person's knowledge, it affects our budget, our savings goals, and our ability to plan for the future together. The secret spending has made me question what else James might be hiding from me. If he could maintain a separate credit card for months without mentioning it, what other financial obligations or activities might he be keeping from me? Trust in a marriage depends on both people being honest about things that affect their shared life. James keeps saying that his spending isn't affecting our joint finances because he's paying for everything with his own money and his own credit. But we're married, which means his debt becomes our debt and his financial decisions affect our overall household situation. There's no such thing as completely separate finances when you're legally and financially tied to someone. I've asked James to close the secret credit card and commit to discussing any major purchases with me before making them. He's agreed to be more transparent going forward, but he's also made it clear that he feels like I'm trying to control his spending and that he should have some financial independence within our marriage. The whole situation has created tension between us because I don't feel like I can trust James to be honest about money, and he feels like I'm being too controlling about his personal purchases. We're supposed to be partners working towards shared financial goals, but right now it feels like we're managing separate financial lives while pretending to be a team. That story ends there. Marriage isn't a cover for running a secret financial operation behind your spouse's back. $3,000 in hidden debt isn't building credit, it's building a foundation for divorce. When someone starts treating their spouse like a business partner they need to hide assets from, the partnership is already over. Let's dive into our next story about someone whose boyfriend apparently thinks photo evidence of their relationship is classified information. My boyfriend Ben refuses to take photos with me. He says he hates pictures, but I wonder if he's hiding something. Ben and I have been dating for about 8 months now, and while our relationship feels solid in most ways, there's one thing that really bothers me. Ben absolutely refuses to take photos with me, and I'm starting to wonder if there's a deeper reason behind his camera phobia than he's admitting. It's not like I'm asking for professional photo shoots or constant selfies, but I would love to have some pictures of us together to look back on and share with friends and family. Every time I suggest taking a photo, Ben immediately says he hates having his picture taken and changes the subject. He acts like I'm asking him to do something genuinely unpleasant. When we go out to nice dinners or fun events, I'll pull out my phone to capture the moment, and Ben will literally duck out of the frame or cover his face with his hand. I have dozens of photos from our dates where I'm smiling at the camera, and Ben is either completely absent or actively avoiding being photographed. I've tried taking candid photos when Ben isn't paying attention, but he always notices and asks me to delete them immediately. He says he looks terrible in pictures and doesn't want images of himself floating around where other people might see them. But the few glimpses I've gotten of him in photos show that he's actually very photogenic. The photo avoidance extends beyond just couple pictures. Ben won't participate in group photos with friends. He avoids being in the background of other people's pictures, and he's never posted a photo of himself on social media. His Instagram account has pictures of food, landscapes, and random objects, but never any images that include him. When I've pressed Ben about why he's so camera shy, he gives vague answers about not liking how he looks in photos and preferring to live in the moment rather than document everything. But his level of photo avoidance goes beyond normal camera shyness. He seems genuinely anxious and uncomfortable whenever cameras come out. Last month we went to my friend's wedding, and when the photographer was taking pictures of all the couples, Ben refused to participate. He said he'd wait for me at our table while I took photos with the other wedding guests. I felt embarrassed having to explain to people why my boyfriend wouldn't take a simple picture with me at a celebration. The lack of photos is starting to affect how I feel about our relationship. I want to be able to look back on memories we've created together, and I want to have images of us to share with people who are important to me. When friends ask to see pictures of Ben, I have to explain that he doesn't like photos, which always leads to awkward questions. I've also started to wonder if Ben's photo avoidance is about something more than just personal preference. Maybe he's worried about his image being connected to me for some reason, or maybe he's trying to keep our relationship private in a way that feels suspicious. The complete refusal to be photographed with me makes me feel like he's hiding something. When I've suggested that we could take photos just for ourselves and not share them anywhere, Ben still refuses. He says he doesn't see the point in taking pictures if we're not going to use them, and that he'd rather focus on enjoying our time together than documenting it. But I don't think wanting a few photos together is asking too much in a relationship. Most couples have at least some pictures of themselves together, and Ben's complete refusal makes me feel like he doesn't want any evidence that we're dating. It's like he wants our relationship to exist only in person and never be captured or remembered visually. I've started to feel like Ben is ashamed of being seen with me, or doesn't want people to know we're together. The photo avoidance combined with his minimal social media presence makes me wonder if he's trying to appear single to other people while maintaining a relationship with me privately. Last week I told Ben that having some photos together was important to me, and asked if he could compromise by agreeing to take just a few pictures for special occasions. He said he'd think about it, but he seemed frustrated that I was pushing the issue when he'd already explained his position. I don't want to force Ben to do something that makes him genuinely uncomfortable, but I also don't want to be in a relationship where I can never have any visual memories of our time together. The complete photo ban feels extreme and makes me question whether there are other reasons behind his camera avoidance that he's not sharing with me. That story is finished. A complete 8-month photo embargo isn't camera shyness, it's witness protection level secrecy. Either he's running some kind of double life, or he's so ashamed of dating her that he can't risk photographic evidence. Normal people take at least one accidental photo in 8 months, but this guy treats cameras like they're kryptonite. Moving to someone whose girlfriend seems to think her ex-boyfriend is a required daily vitamin. My girlfriend Chloe keeps bringing up her ex in conversations. She says they were just friends, but it stings. I've been with Chloe for about 7 months now, and overall our relationship has been really good. We have great chemistry, we enjoy spending time together, and I genuinely care about her. But there's this one issue that's been bothering me more and more as time goes on. Chloe constantly brings up her ex-boyfriend Marcus in conversation, and it's starting to make me feel uncomfortable and insecure. It's not like she talks about Marcus in an obviously romantic way, but he seems to be a reference point for everything in her life. When we're deciding what to watch on Netflix, she'll mention shows that Marcus recommended. When we're talking about restaurants, she'll reference places she went with Marcus. When something reminds her of a funny story, it often involves Marcus somehow. Last weekend we were walking through the park and passed a food truck that was serving tacos. Chloe immediately said, "Oh, Marcus would love this place. He's obsessed with authentic Mexican food." It wasn't a malicious comment, but it made me wonder why her first thought about tacos was what her ex-boyfriend would think about them. I've started paying attention to how often Marcus comes up in our conversations, and it's honestly multiple times per week. Sometimes it's in the context of shared experiences they had, sometimes it's about his opinions on things, and sometimes it's just random observations about what he's doing now. She talks about him like he's still an active presence in her life rather than someone she used to date. When I've gently pointed out that she mentions Marcus a lot, Chloe says they were together for 3 years and were friends before they dated, so it's natural that he'd come up in conversation sometimes. She says she's not trying to make me jealous or compare me to him. She's just sharing memories and experiences that shaped who she is today. I tried to be understanding about that perspective, but I started noticing that Chloe doesn't just mention Marcus in passing. She talks about him with this fond tone in her voice, like she's remembering good times with someone she cares about. It doesn't sound like someone discussing a closed chapter of their life. It sounds like someone who still has feelings for their ex. The Marcus references also seem to happen more when Chloe is feeling nostalgic or sentimental, when she's talking about college memories, career decisions, or personal growth. Marcus is often part of the story. It's like she can't separate her personal development from their shared experiences, which makes me wonder if she's really over that relationship. Last month, Chloe mentioned that Marcus had gotten a promotion at work and seemed genuinely excited for him. When I asked how she knew about his promotion, she said they still text occasionally to catch up on each other's lives. This was the first time she'd mentioned that they were still in contact, and it explained a lot about why she had so much current information about what he was doing. I asked Chloe about the nature of their ongoing friendship, and she said they check in with each other maybe once a month to share updates about work, family, and life in general. She said it's completely platonic and that they both agree their romantic relationship is over, but they value the friendship they built during their 3 years together. While I can understand wanting to maintain friendships with people who are important in your life, it bothers me that Chloe is still emotionally invested in Marcus's well-being and success. The fact that she lights up when talking about his achievements makes me feel like she still cares about him in a way that goes beyond casual friendship. I've also noticed that when Chloe talks about our future together, she sometimes references things differently than Marcus would have done them. It's not direct comparison, but there's this subtle sense that she's measuring our relationship against the template of her relationship with Marcus. Like she has expectations based on what she experienced with him. The constant Marcus mentions are affecting my confidence in our relationship and making me question whether Chloe is fully present with me or still partially attached to her past with him. I don't want to be controlling or jealous, but I also don't want to feel like I'm competing with a ghost for my girlfriend's emotional attention. When I've tried to express my discomfort with how often Marcus comes up, Chloe says I'm being insecure and that she can't erase her past just because it makes me uncomfortable. She says Marcus was a big part of her life for 3 years, and pretending that relationship never happened would be dishonest and unhealthy. But I'm not asking her to pretend Marcus never existed. I'm asking her to be more mindful about how often she brings him up, and to consider how it might affect me to constantly hear about her ex-boyfriend. There's a difference between acknowledging your past and living in it, and sometimes it feels like Chloe is still emotionally residing in her relationship with Marcus. That story concludes there. When your girlfriend treats her ex like a daily news correspondent, you're not dating her. You're third-wheeling her emotional threesome. Marcus gets more airtime in their conversations than most people get in their actual relationships. She's basically keeping him as her emotional backup while using the friendship excuse to avoid dealing with the fact that she's not over him. Moving to our next story about someone whose husband apparently thinks anniversaries are just suggestions on the calendar. My husband Nathan forgets our anniversary every year. He says it's not a big deal, but it hurts. Nathan and I have been married for 4 years now, and every single year on our anniversary, the same disappointing pattern repeats itself. I wake up excited about celebrating another year together, and Nathan acts like it's just another random day on the calendar. He consistently forgets our anniversary, despite my hints, reminders, and obvious disappointment from previous years. Our first anniversary was the most painful because I had such high expectations. I planned a special dinner, bought Nathan a thoughtful gift, and was looking forward to celebrating this milestone in our relationship. When Nathan came home from work that day with no acknowledgement of what day it was, I felt crushed. He'd completely forgotten, and when I reminded him, he seemed surprised that I was upset about it. Since then, I've tried different approaches to help Nathan remember. I'll mention our anniversary casually in conversation leading up to the date, put it on our shared calendar, and even drop not-so-subtle hints about wanting to do something special. But every year, Nathan manages to forget anyway, and I end up feeling hurt and unimportant. Last year, I decided to be more direct and told Nathan a week before our anniversary that I wanted us to plan something special together. He agreed that we should celebrate and said he'd make reservations somewhere nice. But when the day arrived, Nathan had made no plans and seemed to have forgotten our entire conversation about celebrating. When I reminded Nathan that it was our anniversary, he apologized and offered to take me out to dinner that night. But by then, I felt like any celebration would be forced and meaningless because he was only doing it after being prompted. I want my husband to remember our anniversary because it matters to him, not because I have to remind him that it should matter. Nathan's usual response when I get upset about his forgetfulness is that he's bad with dates and that our anniversary shouldn't be more important than showing love throughout the year. He says he demonstrates his commitment to our marriage every day through his actions, and that focusing on one specific date is arbitrary and commercialized. While I appreciate that Nathan is generally a loving and supportive husband, I don't think daily love negates the importance of acknowledging special milestones. Our anniversary represents the day we made a commitment to spend our lives together, and I want to celebrate that commitment annually. It's not about commercialization, it's about honoring the significance of our marriage. I've tried explaining to Nathan that remembering our anniversary isn't just about the date itself, it's about showing me that our marriage is important enough to him to mark and celebrate. When he forgets, it makes me feel like our wedding day and the commitment we made wasn't memorable or meaningful enough for him to keep track of. Nathan says he loves me just as much on our anniversary as he does on any other day, so there's no need to make a big deal about one specific date. But that's exactly why I want to celebrate it, because our love and commitment deserve recognition and appreciation. I don't understand why acknowledging our anniversary feels like such a burden to him. The pattern of forgotten anniversaries has started affecting how I feel about our marriage overall. If Nathan can't remember the most important date in our relationship history, what does that say about how much our marriage means to him? I start questioning whether I'm more invested in our relationship than he is. This year, I decided not to remind Nathan about our anniversary at all. I wanted to see if he would remember, on his own, without any hints or prompts from me. When the day came and went, without any acknowledgement from him, I felt more hurt than ever. 4 years of marriage, and he still can't remember the date we got married without assistance. When I finally told Nathan how hurt I was that he'd forgotten again, he got frustrated and said I was being unrealistic to expect him to remember dates when he forgets birthdays, and holidays too. He said his poor memory isn't personal, it's just how his brain works, and that I should focus on all the ways he does show love, instead of getting upset about his weaknesses. But I don't think forgetting your anniversary is just a memory issue. If something is truly important to you, you find ways to remember it. Nathan remembers work deadlines, sports schedules, and social events that matter to him. He has the ability to keep track of dates when they're priorities for him. That brings us to the end of tonight's collection of relationship stories from the darkest corners of Reddit. If you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.